Hello, hello. Hi everyone, welcome to the stream. Hi Kai, hi Brushy. Welcome. How are you guys doing? Nice to see everyone. Hello. Hi. Happy Halloween! Happy Halloween! Hey, yeah. Cool hat. Thank you. Thank you. It's a hat made specifically for Halloween. That's my very lazy Halloween costume. You've seen it already because I streamed with this PNG the previous week. But very lazy way to make yourself Halloween costume. Just take your PNG and use the color filter to change the color of your outfit. Perfect. Well, plus the hat, but that's just details. That's just additional. Also, why did you check my layers? What the heck? My layers are okay. Brushy. It's for the art streams. Why are you checking more layers? More layers. We're not drawing today anything. So. Let me give a bit of an explanation. To what I'm doing today. I'm also trying to restream, so I'm streaming on Twitch and on YouTube at the same time, but YouTube is kind of additional stuff, just I don't know, for funsies. Maybe some people from my old community will see it and decide to join in, because watching Twitch from Russia can be a bit more complicated than YouTube. But yeah, it's not something that I would like to pay a lot of attention to. But just saying, if my stream dies, that's just because I'm trying to restream, and I think restreaming takes a lot of resources. You're checking my layers respectfully, bro. No, there's a naked body on one of the layers. Don't check them. It's I've been working on another Live 2D model recently, and I'm also making a body for it, and if you check some layers, you can see the naked VTuber. So yeah, it's my dark secret. I see some VTubers naked and nobody else does, but I do because I draw them. But don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone. That's a secret. Anyways, so today's plan basically is to read some well, I call them bedtime stories, but basically this is just Russian fairy tales / folk tales, although not all of them. And obviously I'm gonna be reading them in English. I found the translated versions, and the translation seemed pretty fine to me. I could translate myself, but that would take way more time. Just so you understand, the language of these tales might be a little bit too complicated. It's not your usual spoken language. It's not modern novels. When I say folk tales, they use some sophisticated language, right? So it might be also a bit hard for me sometimes to read some words, so apologies for that. But I did practice a bit before that, so we should do fine. Yeah, I am excited as well, because I genuinely want to share this stories, because I feel obviously not many people know them, but I grew up reading and listening to these fairy tales, and I just want you to listen to them as well, and and basically hear what it's like. What is the vibe of Russian / Slavic childhood fairy tales, because I can't say for sure that all of them are exclusively Russian. Also, they're not exactly horror, at least the ones I want to start with. Oh! Hi, Fito! Oh my god, hello! We just started! Welcome, Fito! Welcome! Hello! Thank you for the follow, DJ Dominique! Welcome! Wait, let me give you a shout out! Fito! Fito Bandito! Oh, is that work? Did I spell it correctly? Hell yeah! Welcome, Fito! Welcome, Raiders! How are you doing, Fito? How was the stream? You've been playing Metal Gear Solid a lot lately. How are you liking the game? Enjoying that? And anyways, for anybody who's still not familiar with me, by the way, for the new people, my name is Shimosa. I'm an artist, PNG tuber. I'm a tuber. I'm just a tuber. Yes, artist tuber. And also, I do art. I play some games, absolutely random ones. But today I have a super cool, interesting stuff, and we just started. So you know, if you want to hear some bedtime stories from Eastern Europe, feel free to stay because I'm gonna be reading them. So you know. If you need some material to fall asleep, it's gonna be right here. Cute tuber. Okay, I'll take that. Thank you, Brush. I'm a cute tuber now. It's fun, old game, but worth playing. It's one of the Baka's favorites, so she's been hanging out. Oh, honestly, so I watched your first stream, right, with Baka for Metal Gear Solid, and like I noticed how excited she is and how much she knows about the game. And, you know, it's always super cool to see people very excited about that. 7 AM bedtime stories. Let's go, bro. 7 AM. It's almost night, right? Right. Also, just one notice. I am trying to restream on YouTube as well, so sometimes I might say some stuff in Russian. For example, привет, Ника! Привет! Добро пожаловать на стримчик. Спасибо, что зашла. Yeah, but I'm doing it just so like maybe some people from my old Russian-speaking community could join and watch the stream as well. But it's just kind of probably a one-time situation. So. Oh, hi, Echo! Hi! Hi. Did Twitch get rid of the shout-out command? Did it? Wait. No, it's still here. I can still see it. I don't know. $10 chibis on VGN? Actually, I still do. Well, okay, let me tell you like a little secret about that chibi VGN. Basically, I made it to get verified, so like my friend could commission me because, you know, it's just a cheap thingy, so I could do that and get verified. But like honestly, it took me less than 2 hours to make one, so if somebody still wants to get the $10 chibi sketch from VGen, feel free. it's a relaxing thing, so feel free. Wait. Thank you for hydrate redeem, by the way. Thank you. I have tea to hydrate with because tea very important. You have a lot of friends who would want send them my way. Less than 2 hours and the chibi is done. It's very simple. It has barely any shading. Like apart from eyes, I don't think it has any shading. So I do that as like, you know, exercise, relax and whatnot. Twitch Mobile just being poopy as per usual. Yeah, Twitch Mobile is Twitch Mobile. It's Twitch Mobile. Don't cut your native language short on our behalf. I'm not a dual language streamer. Any who's can dig it. I mean, I don't really cut my native language on your behalf. It's just my current community, like my English speaking community is bigger than my Russian speaking. Like there is maybe one person on YouTube who's currently watching, and it's used to be my regular, and yeah, we might talk a bit, but like the person's probably gonna be lurking anyways. But yeah. $10 chibi, hell yeah! Shameless self-promotion. I do chibis for $10. Oh, hell yeah! Also, another secret before we start. I am already preparing Christmas Your Character Here art. And I want to make it an animation, but it's gonna be like it's just gonna be a very cute chibi animation for Christmas. you know, nothing much, but I've got an idea yesterday at night. Well, not at night, but in the evening, and I made a sketch. And so yeah, that as soon as Halloween is done, I'm gonna be working on that. So maybe that will also go on VGen. Most likely it will go on VGen because I like using VGen. It feels professional. Professional. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, huge. Anyways, as I said at the start of the stream, the plan today is to read some Russian folk tales. Not necessarily Russian, I would say Slavic, because you know, folk tales is the type of stuff that doesn't have really an author. It's the very old fairy tales that were passed from generations to generations, and obviously there were some people who like wrote them down and recorded, so they're like multiple versions of the same tale exist, like depending from what region they came from. I found some good English translations of the ones that I know well. They're not necessarily spooky, they're just, you know, your average folk tales, and folk tales are usually no joke. They are they are not those nice baby shark type of thingies, even though they were technically intended for kids as well. So we will start with some shorter ones that I selected, and then the rest of the stream, well, maybe not the rest, we'll see how long it takes. I want to try reading less of a folk tale but more of a fairy tale written by Nikolai Vasilievich Gogol, in case you maybe know who that is. This is kind of a long one, but also not really. My mom really wanted me to read that on stream. So we'll see how that goes, but I think we can probably finish it. That one though is supposed to be a scary one. And I'll give you more details about that story as well, because there's some more stuff to tell, you know. Yeah, you probably did hear a few. I mean, I don't know how much people actually know about like our folk tales. Like, I don't know how educated people are on that, because like this kind of folk tales and fairy tales and stuff is something that we study at school, right? But that's just because I'm Russian, but like I doubt people in America do that. Like, why would they? So I don't know how well people know them, but gonna read them. Ника, да, не переживай, Ника. Я рада видеть тебя на стриме. Спасибо, что пришла. Я буду читать сказки русские народные. Ну, несколько тут я выбрала, буду читать. Вот. И я буду читать Вия Гоголя. Николая Васильевича Гоголя. Ну, не знаю, правда, дочитаю или нет. Может быть. Ну, так что оставайся. Прикинь, Гоголь на английском. Русские народные сказки на английском вообще огонь. Английский пора учить. Окей. Yeah, Baba Yaga is also included, by the way. I also selected. So we have the first story. The first folk tales were originally very creepy too, but they got adapted by Disney and places. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think Russian folk tales, well, not all of them at least, are necessarily creepy. Like, even originally, they are mostly intended to teach you some kind of lesson, right? And not all of them are creepy, but they also not like soft like Disney movie, you know? So yeah, let's see what are my reading abilities these days. So the first tale, let me put the name. I made a very cool thingy, and I'll have to type it out by hand every time because yes. So this one is called Stoneflower. And I put the Russian one here as well because, again, I'm hoping that some people, Russian-speaking people, might also watch it. You can learn some Russian, I guess. Okay. Длинный, говоришь, Ви? Мне тоже так показалось. Ну, посмотрим, как пойдет. Может, я его и не дочитаю, потом дочитаю. Но мама сказала, что надо Вио прочитать, поэтому Вио буду читать. Okay. Now, let's get tucked into bed, and I'm gonna start reading for you. This is called Stoneflower. A long time ago, in one of Ural village, there lived a famous craftsman named Prokopich. He made jewelry and other things from malachite and was renowned as the best gem carver in the Urals. The rulers ordered him to teach some boys his profession, but none of them was talented enough. At the same time, an orphan named Danila lived in the village. He was weak and couldn't work at the factory, but he was full of dreams and liked to observe nature. Once he tried to help an old herdsman, but when he played his flute, the old shepherd fell asleep, and several cattle were eaten by wolves. Danila and the herdsman were very, very severely punished. A kind old woman took Danila into her house and healed him by using many herbs and flowers. She taught him the lore of plants, and one day told him about the stone flower from Malachite Mountain. She told him it was the most beautiful flower in the world, but she also warned him, whoever finds that flower will never be happy. After Danila recovered, the manager of the factory sent him to Prokopich to study gem carving. He was surprisingly gifted. Prokopich was a widow without children, and he loved the boy as if he was his own son. Several years passed. Danila became a strong, handsome young man. One day, the owner of the factory sent him a commission to make a vase from malachite, along with a sketch of what he wanted. Danila began the intricate task, but he was unsatisfied with the idea on the sketch. Every day he went to the woods looking for inspiration and observing many flowers and plants. He worked for a long time and at last completed a vase, like the one in the sketch. When he showed it to the other craftsmen, they liked it and praised it, but Danila said, "This vase is made precisely according to the sketch, but there's no living beauty in it. When you look at the simplest flower, joy fills your heart because of its beauty. Where is there such beauty in the stone?" One very old craftsman warned him, "Don't even think that way. Otherwise you could become a servant of the mistress of the Copper Mountain. Her workers live and work in the mountain and nobody ever sees them. Once I was lucky enough to see their work. Magnificent. Our work can't compare with theirs, because they have seen the stone flower and understand the beauty of the stone." After this conversation, Danila went to the woods more often looking for a block of stone for his own vase. Prokopich was worried about him and urged him to marry the nice girl named Katya, to whom Danila was engaged. But Danila said, "I want to wait. First, I need to make my own vase, and then we will think about marriage." One day he was in the woods looking for stone, and suddenly heard a whisper saying, "Danila craftsman, look for stone on Serpent Hill." He turned around and saw the dim outline of a woman, which vanished in a second. He thought, perhaps it was the mistress of a Copper Mountain. So he went to Serpent Hill and found a huge block of malachite. He was very glad, took the stone home and started to carve his vase. But soon again he was disappointed with the result and said sadly, "Maybe I'm just not able to understand the power and the beauty of the stone." So he and Katya announced the date of their wedding. The day before the wedding, he went for a walk to Serpent Hill again, sat down and thought about the stone flower. "Oh, how I desire to see that flower," he mused. All of a sudden, the mistress of Copper Mountain appeared before his eyes. Danila began to implore her, "There is no life for me without seeing that flower." She replied, "I could show it to you, but afterwards you will regret it. Those who have seen my flower have left their family and came to live in my mountain. Think about Prokopich and Katya who love you." "I know," shouted Danila, "but I must see it." "All right," she said. Let's go then to my garden. So she took him and showed him the wonderful stone flower. In the evening, Danila came to the village. His fiancée Katya had a party the day before the wedding. At first, he had fun, danced and sang songs, but then he became sadder and sadder. To Katya's questions, he replied that he had a headache. After the party, he returned home, broke his vase, and ran away. The village was full of rumors after he disappeared, but no one knew where he had gone. 3 years passed. Katya didn't marry. After her parents died, she came to live with old Prokopich and helped him in his work. But soon Prokopich died too, and Katya lived on her own. She didn't have any money, so she decided to try making some brooches. She went to Serpent Hill, hoping to find good piece of stone. But at the hill, she remembered her beloved Danila and wept. Suddenly, she saw a beautiful piece of malachite. Katya took it home and tried to carve several brooches. She worked hard and well, and her carving beautifully set off the natural patterns in the stone. Katya was happy when she sold her works to a merchant in the village. She thought, "My brooches are best in this store. I was lucky finding that malachite. Maybe Danila helped me?" She ran again to Serpent Hill looking for another good stone, but she thought again of Danila and burst into tears, sobbing. "Where are you, my beloved friend? Why did you leave me?" When Katya looked around, it seemed to her she stood in an unfamiliar woods, and the mountain opened before her eyes. "Here's the magic mountain," she thought. "Maybe I could see my Danila?" When Katya looked down, she saw a man who looked just like Danila. The man raised his hands towards her. She wanted to jump down to him, but the vision disappeared. She told her relatives what she had seen, but they didn't believe her and decided that she must be ill. The next day, Katya ran to the hill, hoping desperately to see Danila. Her sister followed her. Katya came to the same place and found herself in the magic woods. She started to call out, "Danila, where are you? Answer me!" The echo answered, "He is not here, he is not here." Then, suddenly, the mistress of Copper Mountain appeared and demanded, "Why did you come to my garden? If you need the stones, take what you wish and go away." Brave Katya replied, "I don't need your dead stones. Give me my Danila back. You don't have the right to take another's fiancé." The mistress laughed. "Do you have any idea whom you are speaking to?" Katya cried out, "I'm not blind. I know who you are, and I'm not afraid of you, not at all. And I know that Danila wants to come back to me." The mistress said, "All right, let him speak then." At the same moment, Katya saw Danila. The mistress said, "You have to choose Danila Craftsman. If you go with her, you will forget everything you saw and learned in the mountain. If you want to stay here, you have to forget the rest of the world." Danila sighed. "I'm sorry. I can't forget the people I love. I think about Katya every minute of my life." The mistress smiled and said, "All right, Danila, go back home. And for your honesty and loyalty, I will give you a present. You will not lose your knowledge that you have learned here, but do not tell people about the mountain. If somebody asks you, 'Where have you been?' just say that you went away to improve your skill." Katya and Danila returned home, filled with joy. Katya's sister could not find her in the woods and returned home. When she came into the house, she saw Danila and Katya. She cried out, "Danila, where have you been?" Danila just smiled. "I went to study my craft with a master who lives far away." Katya and Danila lived happily together for many years. He became known far and wide as the greatest carver in the Ural Mountains. Okay, that is the end of our first tale. So what are you thinking? Does it feel like? Actually, I also need to hydrate. С английским пока в школе училась не сложилось, а теперь если учить, то китайский придется, чтобы с одногруппником разговаривать. Понимаю, понимаю, не осуждаю. You didn't expect a happy ending? I mean, yeah, not all tales have like the sad ending, to be honest. I think like Russian tales, like a good percentage of them, like of original folk tales, have actually pretty nice ending. Oh, thank you for Headbutt and thank you for Hydrate. Made you realize you pronounce Ural wrong? I mean, I don't know if there is English pronunciation. Another thing I probably should mention about the tales that I'm gonna be reading, I'm gonna be pronouncing names and like place names, how I would pronounce them in Russian, because it makes me immensely uncomfortable to pronounce them with the English accent, because I don't even know if like there is a different pronunciation. Because like, for example, you know, right, that Moscow is not called Moscow in Russian, right? Like it has a translation, but that I know, that I know exactly how the translation is pronounced. But for a lot of other names and places, like I have no idea. So I'm just gonna be pronouncing them how I know in Russian, you know? You know? Proper Russian accent in the right way. Yeah, for once, for once. О, понравилось? Ну, я, конечно, такой себе чтец на инглише. Но, типа, каменный цветок на инглише. Да даже почти не запнулась ни разу. Спасибо, Ника. Спасибо. So yeah, today is a special stream where we're gonna be hearing a lot of Russian stuff. Because, you know, I was just thinking the other day, I really still love my country. Even though I don't live there anymore these days, but like the people and culture, and I do really want to share like the cool things about it that you know, other people might not know much, because like sure, we know memes and stuff, but like, have you ever read the fairy tales? Didn't think so, but I think they're super cool and interesting. You know, we're having cultural exchange stream here. You know. Oh, let me hydrate again. Nice. Oh, my Russian bank account remembered me just now. Damn. What the heck? They do send me some promo messages sometimes, hoping I still gonna use them, but I don't use them. Ay ay ay. Let me see which one is gonna be next. Also, I have been informed that the one that I want to read last, like the final big story, is very big, which I do agree. Like, when my mom suggested it, I had doubts. However, like, I think we can do it. It has chapters in it, I think. Yeah, that we can, like, take breaks. So it might be a bit of a longer stream. We'll see how it goes. Anyways, which one is the next? I was thinking about reading, let me see. So I have Baba Yaga, right? Planned as well. But I was thinking about Ivan Tsarevich and Grey Wolf as well. But I need to see. I mean, they're not necessarily long. I think we put Baba Yaga as the last one before the long story, and the next one is gonna be Ivan Tsarevich. Okay, let me change the story title real quick. Okay, that's removed. It's removed. Now let's check my typing abilities, if I can type it correctly without misspelling. I could probably just copy paste the name, but wait. Let me try that. Yep. Another question is, do I still remember how to how like the Russian tales are called? Because like I vaguely recognize them, but like do I remember the proper name? But I think that's something like this, right? If I'm wrong, that person on my YouTube probably will correct me. Oh no, the title is too long, it doesn't fit in the background anymore. It's not like the background is made for it. But don't mind my very scuffed, very quick setup for the stream. Also, I don't like that I think it needs to be a little lighter, the color. Hey, let me make it a tiny bit. There you go. At least people can see it now. Okay, so the next fairy tale, I think it was one of my favorites as a child. I don't know, it's just like one of those fairy tales that seems more magical than serious, because like the previous, the Stone Flower, it's kind of like, you know, it has a fantasy element, but it feels a bit more serious. But the one that I'm gonna be reading, Ivan Tsarevich and the Grey Wolf, is a bit more fairy tale-y, fantasy. Нам, наверное, тоже в детском саду читали, если честно. Я в детстве эту сказку 100% очень много раз читала. Ну вот, пришло время послушать ее на английском языке. Выучить пару английских слов. Okay. Anyways, also there are some very pretty pictures on the website related to the story. Like, I think I had this fairy tale in like a fairy tales book, right? And it had such pretty illustration, but oh well, maybe one day I'll find it. I wish I prepared to put like some illustrations on stream as well, but unfortunately I didn't. But I can maybe take this one, but I can't really see it. Damn, guys, you know, okay, a little bit, I bet I have to say. I think like the Russian folktales have such a special vibe that I absolutely love and adore. And yeah, I'm enjoying this so much. Oh my god. Okay, let's start. Ivan Tsarevich and the Grey Wolf. Once upon a time there lived a Tsar who had 3 sons. The youngest was called Ivan. The Tsar had a wondrous garden. In it grew a tree with golden apples. Someone began coming to the Tsar's garden to steal the apples. The Tsar became upset about it. He sent some guards there. None of the guards were able to track the culprit. The Tsar stopped eating and drinking. He became listless. His sons tried to comfort him. "Dear father, don't grieve. We ourselves will guard the garden." The oldest son said, "Today is my turn. I will go to watch over the garden." The oldest son set out for the garden. A little while before evening, there wasn't a trace of anyone, and he lay down in the soft grass and fell asleep. In the morning, the Tsar asked him, "Well, enlighten me. Did you see the culprit?" "No, father. All night I didn't sleep. My eyes never closed, but I didn't see anything." On the next night, the middle son went to stand guard and also slept the whole night, but in the morning said that he hadn't seen the culprit. At last, it was time for the youngest son to stand watch. Ivan went to guard his father's garden, and even though he was sitting there afraid, he didn't lie down. When he started to dream, he took dew from the grass and wiped the dream from his eyes. Midnight came, and to him it appeared there was light in the garden. It got brighter and brighter. All the garden was lit up. He saw the firebird sitting in the apple tree, pecking at the golden apples. Ivan Tsarevich crawled towards the apple tree and grabbed the bird by the tail. The firebird flapped its wings and flew away, leaving in Ivan's head one feather. In the morning, Ivan Tsarevich went to his father. "Well, my dear Vanya, you didn't see the culprit either?" "Dear father, I remember, but don't remember who destroys our garden. Here is a memento." Apologies, my headset disconnected for a second. I guess happens. Dear Father, I remember, but don't remember, who destroys our garden. Here is a memento from the culprit for you to take. It is, dear Father, the Firebird. The Tsar took the feather, and from that time began to eat and to drink, and knew no more sorrow. It was a beautiful time to him, and he pondered about the Firebird. He called his sons and said to them, My dear children, saddle would you good steeds, go would you about the wide world, to place unknown, where you might catch the Firebird. The children bowed to their father, saddled good horses, and set out on their way. The oldest in one direction, the middle in another, and Ivan Tsarevich in the third direction. Ivan went a long time, or a short time. The day was summery. Ivan Tsarevich grew tired, got down from his horse, fettered him, and tumbled down to sleep. A long time or short time passed. Ivan Tsarevich woke up and saw no horse. He went to look for him. He walked and hoped to find his horse nibbling on a bush. Though Ivan Tsarevich, where without a horse to go in such remoteness? Well, what of it, he thought. Set out, nothing else to do. And he went on foot. He walked and walked, grew tired to death, sat on the grass, and grew more sad. From out of nowhere ran towards him the grey wolf. What, Ivan Tsarevich sitting there grieving, your head hanging? How can I not grieve, grey wolf? I am left alone without a good steed. It is I, Ivan Tsarevich, who ate your horse. I'm sorry. Tell me, why are you traveling in this remote place? Where are you going? My father sent us to go about the wide world to find the Firebird. Poh. You and my own good horse could not in 3 years go to the Firebird. I alone know where he lives. So, and it will be. I ate your horse, and I will serve you. It's only right. Sit on me, and hold on tight. Ivan Tsarevich sat on his back, and the grey wolf leapt flying through the blue forest, faster than the eye could see, past rivers and lakes. For a long time, or a short time, they flew to a high fortress. The grey wolf said, Listen to me, Ivan Tsarevich, and remember, crawl over the wall. Don't be afraid. It's a lucky hour. All the guards are asleep. You will see in the terem window, on the windowsill stands a golden cage, and in the cage sits the Firebird. Take the bird, lay him by your breast, and look but don't touch the cage. Ivan Tsarevich crawled over the wall, saw the terem. On the windowsill sat the golden cage, and in the cage sat the Firebird. He took the bird, lay him by his breast, and looked at the cage. His heart caught fire. Ah, such golden decoration! How can I not take it? And he remembered what the grey wolf had said to him. He only touched the cage through the fortress sounds. Pipes piped. The guards woke up, grabbed Ivan Tsarevich and carried him to Tsar Afron. Tsar Afron was enraged and said, Who are you? Where are you from? I am the son of Tsar Ferapont, Ivan Tsarevich. Ah, what a disgrace! A Tsar's son goes out and steals. But what about when your bird flew into our garden and destroyed it? But if you had come to me to ask for advice, I would have given him to you out of respect for your father Tsar Ferapont. But now, about all the city, the most uncomplimentary glory upon you. Well, and all right, render to me a service, I ask you. In some such principality, Tsar Kusman has a horse with a golden mane. Bring him to me. Then I will give you the Firebird with a cage. Ivan Tsarevich grew very excited. Went to the grey wolf, but the wolf said to him, I told you, don't disturb the cage. Why didn't you listen to my instructions? Well, I beg you, grey wolf. Well, well, I beg. Alright, sit on me. Take the rope, don't say that it's not strong. Again set off the grey wolf with Ivan Tsarevich. For a long time, or a short time, they flew to other fortress, where stood the horse with the golden mane. Crawl, Ivan Tsarevich, over the wall. The guards are asleep. Go to the stable. Take the horse. And look, but don't touch the bridle. Ivan Tsarevich crawled into the fortress. All the guards were asleep. He went to the stables, took the horse with the golden mane, and looked at the bridle. It was gold with precious stones. Ivan Tsarevich touched the bridle, and a loud noise went all through the fortress. Pipes piped, the guards awoke, grabbed Ivan and carried him to Tsar Kusman. Who are you? Where are you from? I am Ivan Tsarevich. Such stupidity to undertake, to steal a horse. On this even a simple peasant would agree. Well, all right, I beg you, Ivan Tsarevich, render me a service. Tsar Dalmat has a daughter, Yelena Prekrasnaya. Go and get her, bring her to me, and I'll give you the horse with a golden mane and his bridle. Ivan Tsarevich became more dejected than ever. He went toward the grey wolf. I told you, Ivan Tsarevich, don't touch the bridle. You didn't listen to my advice. Well, I beg you, grey wolf. Well, well, you beg. Yes, all right, sit on my back. Again sped off the grey wolf with Ivan Tsarevich. They rushed to Tsar Dalmat. He had a garden in his fortress where Yelena Prekrasnaya walked with her mother and her nurse. Grey Wolf said, "This time I myself will go. You go back the way we came. I will soon catch up with you." Ivan Tsarevich went back the way they had come, and the Grey Wolf jumped over the wall and into the garden. He sat in the hiding behind the bush and watched. Yelena Prekrasnaya came out with her mother and nurse. They walked and walked, and her mother and nurse stopped for a bit. Grey Wolf grabbed Yelena Prekrasnaya, leapt over the wall, and took flight. Ivan Tsarevich was going along the way, when suddenly the Grey Wolf caught up with him. On the wolf sat Yelena Prekrasnaya. Ivan Tsarevich rejoiced, but the Grey Wolf said to him, "Sit on me quickly, for they will not be far behind." The Grey Wolf sped away with Ivan Tsarevich and Yelena Prekrasnaya the way they had come, through the blue forest vaster than the eye could see, past rivers and lakes. For a long time, or for a short time, they hurried to Tsar Kusman. The Grey Wolf asked, "Why, Ivan Tsarevich, have you become even more sad?" "But how can I not be sad, Grey Wolf? How can I be parted with such beauty? How can I exchange Yelena Prekrasnaya for a horse?" The Grey Wolf answered, "I won't part you with such beauty. We will hide her somewhere. I will turn myself into Yelena Prekrasnaya, and you will bring me to Tsar." They hid Yelena Prekrasnaya in a forest izba. The Grey Wolf turned his head and became exactly like Yelena Prekrasnaya. Ivan Tsarevich took him to Tsar Kusman. The Tsar rejoiced and began thanking him. "Thank you, Ivan Tsarevich, for you have brought to me a bride. Take the horse with the golden mane and bridle." Ivan Tsarevich sat on the horse and went for Yelena Prekrasnaya. He picked her up and set her on the horse, and they set out on their way. Tsar Kusman had a wedding, and feasted all day until evening. Then he needed to lay down to sleep, but when he and his young wife went upstairs, he looked, and in place of Yelena Prekrasnaya was a wolf. The Tsar turned angrily towards him, but the wolf ran off. The Grey Wolf caught up with Ivan Tsarevich and asked, "Why are you sad, Ivan Tsarevich? How can I not be sad? It would be a pity to part with such a bridle, and to trade the horse with golden mane for a firebird." "Don't grieve, I will help you," and they traveled to Tsar Afron. The wolf said, "Hide the horse and Yelena Prekrasnaya. I will turn myself into the horse with the golden mane, and you will bring me to Tsar Afron." They hid Yelena Prekrasnaya and the horse with the golden mane in the forest. The grey wolf looked over his back and turned himself into the horse with the golden mane. Ivan Tsarevich took him to Tsar Afron. The Tsar was overjoyed and gave him the firebird with the golden cage. Ivan Tsarevich returned on foot to the forest, sat Yelena Prekrasnaya on the horse with the golden mane, picked up the golden cage with the firebird, and they traveled in the direction of his homeland. Tsar Afron commanded his servants to bring his horse to him. He wanted to sit on him, but the horse turned into the grey wolf. The Tsar was so surprised that he fell down right where he was standing, and the grey wolf took flight, quickly catching up with Ivan Tsarevich. Now, farewell. I am not allowed to go any further. Ivan Tsarevich got down from his horse, and 3 times bowed down to the ground with respect. He thanked the grey wolf. Then he said, "You won't be parted with me forever. I again will call you into service." Ivan Tsarevich thought, "Aren't you already in my service? All of my wishes you have fulfilled." He sat on the horse with the golden mane, and again set out with Yelena Prekrasnaya and the firebird. They traveled into his region. They had only a little bread left. They traveled to a little spring, and drank the water, and ate the bread, and lay down on the grass to rest. Ivan Tsarevich fell asleep. His brothers suddenly came upon him. They had traveled to other lands seeking the firebird, and returned empty-handed. They came upon Ivan and saw all that he had acquired. Then they said, "Let us kill our brother. All that he has gained will be ours." This decided, they killed Ivan Tsarevich. They saddled the horse with the golden mane, picked up the firebird, sat Yelena Prekrasnaya on the horse, and threatened her. "At home, don't say anything." Ivan Tsarevich lay dead. 2 crows were already flying over him. From out of nowhere ran the grey wolf, and grabbed the crow and his wife. "You fly, crow, for the water of life and death. Bring to me the water of life and the water of death, and then I will let go of your wife." The crow flew for a long time, or a short time, bringing the water of life and the water of death. The grey wolf sprinkled the water of death on Ivan's wounds. The wounds healed. He sprinkled him with the water of life, and Ivan got up. "Oh, how soundly I slept!" "You would have slept even sounder," said the grey wolf, "if I hadn't sprinkled you with the water of life and the water of death. Your own brothers killed you and took all that you have gained. Even now one of your brothers is to marry Yelena Prekrasnaya. Sit on me quickly." They rushed home, where indeed Ivan's brother was preparing to marry Yelena Prekrasnaya. No sooner had Ivan Tsarevich entered the castle than Yelena Prekrasnaya jumped up and threw her arms around him. "This is my true bridegroom, Ivan," she cried, "not the evil brother sitting there." And she told the Tsar everything the brothers had done, and how they had threatened to kill her if she told anyone what had happened. The Tsar was very angry, and threw the 2 oldest brothers into the dungeon. Then Ivan Tsarevich married Yelena Prekrasnaya, and they lived happily ever after. This is the end of this fairy tale. Wow. I haven't read it in such a long time. I already forgot, like, the details, but damn. Looking at it from the point of view of, the modern days, like the lady, they just stole a lady, and she apparently fell in love with him because no reason. Just because he stole her and he had a cool wolf, so she was like, yeah, I guess that's my groom now. Hell yeah. Привет, Амир! Привет! Добро пожаловать на стрим. Хрумкий подквас. Соглашусь. Yeah, Ivan got carried by Wolf. Basically, Wolf did everything in this tale. I mean, like, again, as I said, I think folk tales, like, supposed to have a lot of, like, hidden meanings in this, so it's like you shouldn't take it as a proper story, right? Like you would take a Disney tale, but it's just like there to teach you a lesson and whatnot. But it also has like a very special vibe to it, I guess. But yeah, basically the wolf ate the horse, and then the wolf was like, you know what, I guess I'm helping you now. Yeah, if you have brothers, they will get jealous of you and they will kill you. That's probably the moral of the story or something. Ay, ay, ay. The wolf did all the work. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. He actually did. Well, I mean, Ivan did try to do some work right at the start, but he was so greedy that he was like, actually, you know what? Let me do the greedy. Не, братья у Ивана вообще не очень, если честно. Ну, им даже имен не дали в сказке. Чё ожидать от персонажей, у которых нет имен? But I used to like it a lot as a child, I think, because of the wolf. Like, the wolf really makes the story nice. And also, of course, the illustrations. Like, if you've ever seen any illustrations from like Russian fairy tale books and stuff, they look so pretty. Like, bro, the artist. Like, I'm not talking about more modern stuff, but the stuff that was when I was a baby. Oh my god, the illustrations were always so pretty. Tea. It's kind of cold now. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, let me see. We have another shorter one, like very short one. And after that, we're gonna try the longer one. But honestly, I don't mind streaming a bit longer for like maybe 3 or 3.5 hours. Although my voice might start dying, so as I said, at some point we'll have to take a break, because as much as I enjoy reading out loud, especially in English, you know, good practice and all, it's a bit hard to keep reading for so long. Единственная сказка, где волк добрый персонаж. А какие у нас еще? Ну волка 7 козлят есть сказка, я знаю, да. А я не помню уже, какие у нас еще сказки с волками есть. Не, ну помню, да, были еще. Мне кажется, вот те, где сказки, где в основном животные персонажи, да, всякие там... Не помню, короче, не помню сказки. Но мне кажется, сказки, где животные персонажи, волк негативный персонаж. А здесь, так как у нас в основном люди, мне кажется, да. Но, наверное, где-то еще, может, есть хороший волк. By the way, I want to mention, I'm not sponsored, I swear, but, did you guys know that there are some cool cartoons available based on Russian fairy tales? Not only cartoons, there's so much stuff you guys missing out on, but, let me search something for you. If you really want to check out something that's like related to Russian, something that's related a lot to Russian fairy tales, but more modernized, right? We have very cool cartoons based on some tales that I'm not gonna be reading today. However, let me see. So they're available on YouTube, but they have English subtitles. I watched it at some point with my roommate, and she really enjoyed it. Let me send the link to one of them that you can start with. Maybe at some point we'll have a watch party, because like this stuff, especially like the first cartoons they made, about like what we call bogatyri, the Russian version of knights, basically, you know, very strong warriors. They are fantastic, and they also have Ivan Tsarevich and the Grey Wolf, but it's like again, as I said, it's like a modern adaptation, and it's very different, and it has more humor, and it has more cohesive story than that. But there is a wolf character. Wait, let me also send you the link to that one. As far as I remember, they had English subtitles, but it's like built-in YouTube subtitles. They are pretty good, but like you know how YouTube subtitles are, but just enable them and check them. But I highly recommend, if you have nothing to watch at some point and you're like, damn, I want to check it out, you should, because it's cool stuff. Волков обычно демонизировали в сказках, они представляют опасность для людей. Это правда. Это правда. Мне кажется, тот волк даже и не волк, а колдун, скорее всего, какой-нибудь. Ну, в общем, мне, короче, нравится очень Иван Царевич и Серый волк. Не знаю, в детстве любила эту сказку, наверное, из-за волка. Okay. Let me see. We have another fairy tale coming. Another short one. This one is gonna be even shorter, and this is probably the one everybody expected. This is the fairy tale that I remember the least. But for some reasons, I don't know, because I think it wasn't the one fairy tale that I used to read a lot as a child. But it's also a short one, so it's gonna be pretty nice. Okay. Let me move that over here. Your favorite. This is, I think, the one fairy tale character that people know. Also, let me real quick do something so my mic does not turn itself off like it usually does. I need to... Where's the... Okay, I need to turn this a bit down. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Now, let's read our final short story. I'm pretty sure everybody is already sleeping at this point, which is good, as you should. This one is, I think, goes a bit into the dark category because it's Baba Yaga. But, you know, again, it's not exactly a horror anyways. Baba Yaga. Once upon a time, there was a man and a woman who had an only daughter. When his wife died, the man took another. But the wicked stepmother took a dislike to the girl, beat her hard, and wondered how to be rid of her forever. One day, the father went off somewhere, and the stepmother said to the girl, "Go to your aunt, to my sister, and ask her for a needle and a thread to sew you a blouse." The aunt was really Baba Yaga, the bony witch. Now, the little girl was not stupid, and she first went to her own aunt for advice. "Good morning, auntie," she said. "Mother has sent me to her sister for a needle and thread to sew me a blouse. What should I do?" The aunt told her what to do. "My dear niece," she said, "you will find the birch tree. There that will lash your face. You must tie it with a ribbon. You will find gates that will creak and bang. You must pour oil on the hinges. You will find dogs that will try to rip you apart. You must throw them fresh rolls. You will find a cat that will try to scratch your eyes out. You must give her some ham." The little girl went off, walked, and finally came to the witch's abode. There stood a hut, and inside sat Baba Yaga, the bony witch, spinning. "Good day, auntie," said the little girl. "Good day, dearie," the witch replied. "Mother sent me for a needle and thread to sew me a blouse," said the girl. "Very well," Baba Yaga said. "Sit down and weave." The girl sat at the loom. Then Baba Yaga went out and told her serving maid, "Go and heat up the buff house and give my niece a good wash. I want to eat her for breakfast." The serving maid did as she was bid, and the poor little girl sat there half dead with fright, begging, "Oh, please, dear serving maid, don't bomb the wood. Pour water on instead, and carry the water in a sieve." And she gave the maid a kerchief. Meanwhile, Baba Yaga was waiting. She went to the window and asked, "Are you weaving, dear niece? Are you weaving, my dear?" "I'm weaving, auntie," the girl replied. "I'm weaving, my dear." When Baba Yaga moved away from the window, the little girl gave some ham to the cat and asked her whether there was any escape. At once the cat replied, "Here is a comb and a towel. Take them and run away. Baba Yaga will chase you. Put your ear to the ground, and when you hear her coming, throw down the towel, and a wide, wide river will appear. And if she crosses the river and starts to catch you up, put your ear to the ground again, and when you hear her coming close, throw down your comb, and a dense forest will appear. She won't be able to get through that." The little girl took the towel and comb and ran. As she ran from the house, the dogs tried to tear her to pieces, but she tossed them the fresh rolls and they let her pass. The gates tried to bang shut, but she poured some oil on the hinges and they let her through. The birch tree tried to lash her face, but she tied it with a ribbon and it let her pass. In the meantime, the cat sat down at the loom to weave. Though, truth to tell, she tangled it all up instead. Now and then Baba Yaga would come to the window and call, "Are you weaving, dear niece? Are you weaving, my dear?" And the cat would answer in a low voice, "I'm weaving, auntie. I'm weaving, my dear." The witch rushed into the hut and saw that the girl was gone. She gave the cat a good beating and scolded her for not scratching out the girl's eyes. But the cat answered her, "I've served you for years, yet you've never given me a bone, but she gave me some ham." Baba Yaga then turned on the dogs, the gates, the birch tree, and the serving maid, and set to thrashing and scolding them all. But the dogs said to her, "We've served you for years, yet you've never even thrown us a burnt crust, but she gave us fresh rolls." And the gates said, "We've served you for years, and yet you've never even poured water on our hinges, but she oiled them for us." And the birch tree said, "I've served you for years, and yet you've never even tied me up with thread, but she tied me with a ribbon." And the serving maid said, "I've served you for years, yet you've never even given me a rag, but she gave me a kerchief." And that is the end of this story. As I said, this is a bit of a shorter one. But yeah, I do actually remember that one as well, but I think it wasn't the one that I used to read a lot back in the days. Сочетание Бабы Яги английского само собой навевает воспоминания о песне Баба Яга группы Slaughter to Prevail. Ah, don't know that one. Hi, Stargazer. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. How are you doing? Thank you for stopping by. Baba Yaga. Hi, Baka. Oh, damn, I didn't notice you there. You're too small, Baka. Thank you for stopping by as well. What do you mean, John Wick? I'm reading fairy tales. Of course, Baba Yaga. It's, you know, one of the main characters of a lot of folk tales. So it's a very cool. What I like actually about Baba Yaga character in folk tales, that like in some stories she is evil, like in this one, right? But also there are quite a bit of stories where Baba Yaga is pretty much helpful for the main character. So like Baba Yaga is not necessarily a negative character. She can be very helpful and kind. She is basically just a witch, I guess, from the forest, and she does whatever she wants because she's a witch. That story started pretty Halloweeny, I'd say, with the cat scratching the eyes out. Well, and like this is that type of stories that's supposed to be read to kids. But again, we know like they're the original fairy tales, like the Red Riding Hood and whatnot, where you know also a lot of animals and people get killed and in very unpleasant ways. Let me see. There's still so many cool fairy tales we could read, but I think our next one is gonna be the longer one that I told you about. This one will be a bit harder to read. Like I tried to read a bit of it, and it uses a lot of words that like I didn't exactly know how to pronounce. I'm not sure if I'm better at it, but it's gonna be. We're gonna see. And I also suggest that we take a short break before we continue, because again, as I said, this is a longer story. It's like, you can say it is a book. It's not exactly a book, you know? It's like short enough to not be a book, but it's a pretty long story. So I think we need to take a small break, just for purposes to stretch. Maybe somebody wants to get some tea, some snacks, and after that we will come back and continue. And I'll tell you a bit more about that story, because I also have a bit more to tell about it. So yeah, let me put my fancy be right back screen so you can enjoy my wonderful clips, and I will see you in I think about like 5 minutes maybe. Okay? Okay. See you in 5 minutes. Such a wholesome game. Well, probably. I don't know. I don't know much about this game, but like I have no more words for you guys. Absolutely zero. I have nothing else to add. Like, no, we do not have any letters, luckily, Nyan. So we're not going to, do this, Nyan. Ooh, we can get a 70 words club, Nyan. But this is gonna give us only like the decorations, Nyan, right? Do we want to spend money on decorations? Thank you for the head pat, comrade. Yes, I want the decoration. Many 100,000 years ago, on a stormy night, me and some of my friends went to the nearest grocery store to obtain a block of water. You know what I saw on TikTok? You know what I saw on TikTok? Let me show you. Zoom. Yes. Look. Look, he cute. He sleeps. Bro, no! Bro, bro! Why do you have to ruin the moment? Why? No, but what am I talking? I'm talking about pies. What are you thinking about? Like, tell me, what are you thinking about? I'm just telling you about the pies with cream.
I even remembered the Lazy Town. Very wholesome kids show. I do not understand. People, you need to touch some grass here. Please don't clean the green. No, please. I'm all in the juices.
What the dog doing?
The dog is eating lemon for some reasons. Oh no, that's not what I meant! Please don't clip that. I swear to God, if somebody clips that phrase, I'm gonna draw tentacles or something. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to say it, it's just like, it's everywhere. Like, I don't know how to properly eat the lemon. I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh, yes. Oh. Oh. Not the shot. Not that. Please. Why did you even remember? Actually, instead of making a test model, I would like to draw an armpit, and I end up working on this artwork. And yeah. What's going on? What kind of energy does this stream have, brothers? We're just playing a wholesome, well, not really wholesome, more of like a creepy cat game, but bro, what's going on? You did turn on some computer. You're not wrong there, bro. We turned on the computers. So, makes sense, I guess. What with that timing, bro? What with that timing? Oh no. Oh. Okay. Thank you for the hydrate. Yes. Yes, need to hydrate.
I am back. I have returned. Apologies. The clip player was quiet because I turned down the sound at some point and I forgot that it's the sound for a clip player. But you still enjoyed the clips. Feel free to make more so we can add more to the collection. But I hope everybody is slowly coming back with a cup of tea. Some snacks, maybe? I wish I could have some snacks, but I'm gonna be reading, so no snacks for me. So let me do a little bit of an introduction. First of all, let's change the name. Story title. Okay. It has a very, a very simple pronunciation, but apparently some people struggle with it. Okay, this is gonna be our final story, and this is a long story. I do intend to hopefully finish it today. Although, again, as I said, it does take long, so I had doubts, but I am ready to take on the challenge. And also, it's been so long since I read the story myself, like basically ages. So I do really want to do that. Although I was reading it in Russian last time, obviously English is gonna be kind of new for me. Also, this is not a folk tale. Saying it's written by, you know what, let me put it in a story title as well. Where is my so it's written by, oh my god, oh yes, that goes right there. Give me a second to spell it properly so I don't offend anyone. Yes, I'm not gonna be putting it in Russian writing, probably, because I'm pretty sure everybody knows what that is. But, this is a story that has an author, right? It's written by Nikolai Vasilievich Gogol. Gogol, haha, Gogol. Ay. He has a lot of very good stories and like the spooky ones as well. So if at some point you're like, I don't know, you want to read some cool stuff, check out Nikolai Vasilievich Gogol. He got some pretty good stories. Like I think I like Gogol quite a bit. This is one of the authors that also we study at school, right? Like his stories are a part of our school literature program pretty much all 11 grades, I think. I don't know, but like I think Gogol is always there. Regarding V, I think is one of his very popular stories. And V has actually 2 movies. In case you didn't know, there is an old movie, Soviet Union basically type of old movie. It obviously doesn't have that good of graphics, but I think that movie is great. I watched it more than once, and I think even though like they don't have any VFX stuff, right? Like everything is made like costumes and all, it looks fantastic. It's very spooky, so like for Halloween, that one is cool. I don't know if it exists anywhere with a English translation though, because it's an old movie. You know, but there is also a more recent movie. Let me even Google what year it was released in. And you probably can find the English translation for that one easier, unless you've already seen it. Oh wait, okay, so the old one is the old one. Yeah, okay, so the newer one was released in 2014, and obviously it has the actual more modern VFX graphics. I think I watched the newer one as well, and I think I still prefer the older one because it looks spookier than the newer. But feel free to check them out. In case you didn't know that, those are good movies, and I'm pretty sure you can find English translation, like subtitles maybe or something, for the 2014 one, because I think it even had like a dubbed version. I'm not exactly sure, but I think there was a dubbed version. So you can probably find it. So yeah, it's a long enough story to make a movie about, you know? So, since it's not a folk tale, it will have a different vibe, very different. It will have a lot more details because, in case you don't know, Russian authors, like, you know, of that period tend to write like just a lot of words. Obviously, nobody as good as Dostoevsky at writing a lot of words, but... Oh no, Fito 8 is popcorn. Fito! You need more popcorn. So yeah, there's gonna be a lot of description of things. So it's a true bedtime story. But I think it's a very nice book. So let's start. We'll take a break somewhere in the middle as well. So like my throat doesn't die. And also I might have a bit more troubles reading this specific story just because of like a lot of words. You know, like the authors like to use complicated language, and this complicated language gets translated into even more complicated English language. So, well, let's start. V. As soon as the clear seminary bell began sounding in Kiev in the morning, the pupils would come flocking from all parts of town. The students of grammar, rhetoric, philosophy, and theology hastened with their books under their arms over the streets. The grammarians were still mere boys. On the way, they pushed against each other and quarreled with shrill voices. Nearly all of them wore torn or dirty clothes, and their pockets were always crammed with all kinds of things. Push bones, pipes made out of pans, remains of confectionery, and sometimes even young sparrows. The latter would sometimes begin to chirp in the midst of deep silence in the school, and bring down on their possessors severe cannings and thrashings. The rhetoricians walked in a more orderly way. Their clothes were generally untorn, but on the other hand their faces were often strangely decorated. One had a black eye, and the lips of another resembled a single blister. These spoke to each other in tenor voices. The philosophers talked in a tone an octave lower. In their pockets they only had fragments of tobacco, never whole cakes of it. For what they could get hold of, they used at once. They smelled so strongly of tobacco and brandy that a workman passing by them would often remain standing and sniffing with his nose in the air like a hound. About this time of day, the marketplace was generally full of bustle, and the market women selling rolls, cakes, and honey tarts plucked the sleeves of those who wore coats of fine cloth or cotton. Young sir! Here! Here!" they cried from all sides. "Rolls and cakes are tasty tarts, very delicious. I have baked them myself." Another drew something long and crooked out of her basket and cried, "Here is a sausage, young sir. Buy a sausage." "Don't buy anything from her," cried the rival. "See how greasy she is, and what a dirty nose and hands she has." But the market women carefully avoided appealing to the philosophers and the theologians, for these only took handfuls of eatables merely to taste them. Arrived at the seminary, the whole crowd of students dispersed into the low, large classrooms with small windows, broad doors, and blackened benches. Suddenly, they were filled with a many-toned murmur. The teachers heard the pupils' lessons repeated, some in shrill and the others in deep voices which sounded like a distant booming. While the lessons were being said, the teachers kept a sharp eye open to see whether pieces of cake or other dainties were protruding from their pupils' pockets. If so, they were promptly confiscated. When this learned crowd arrived somewhat earlier than usual, or when it was known that the teachers would come somewhat late, a battle would ensue, as though planned by general agreement. In this battle, all had to take part, even the monitors who were appointed to look after the order and morality of the whole school. Two theologians generally arranged the conditions of the battle, whether each class should split into two sides or whether all the pupils should divide themselves into two halves. In each case, the grammarians began the battle, and after the rhetoricians had joined in, the former retired and stood on the benches in order to watch the fortunes of the fray. Then came the philosophers with long black mustaches, and finally the thick-necked theologians. The battle generally ended in a victory for the latter, and the philosophers retired to the different classrooms, rubbing their aching limbs and throwing themselves on the benches to take breath. When the teacher, who in his own time had taken part in such contests, entered the classroom, he saw by the heated faces of his pupils that the battle had been very severe, and while he caned the hands of the rhetoricians, in another room another teacher did the same for the philosophers. On Sundays and festival days, the seminaries took puppet theaters to the citizens' houses. Sometimes they acted a comedy, and in that case it was always a theologian who took the part of the hero-heroine, Potiphar or Herodias, etc. As a reward for their exertions, they received a piece of linen, a sack of maize, half a roast goose, or something similar. All the students, lay and clerical, were very poorly provided with means for procuring themselves necessary substance, but at the same time very fond of eating, so that, however much food was given to them, they were never satisfied, and the gifts bestowed by rich landowners were never adequate for their needs. Therefore, The commissariat committee, consisting of philosophers and theologians, sometimes dispatched the grammarians and rhetoricians under the leadership of a philosopher, themselves sometimes joining in the expedition, with sacks on their shoulders into the town, in order to levy a contribution on the fleshpots of the citizens, and then there was a feast in the seminary. The most important event in the seminary year was the arrival of the holidays. These began in July, and then generally all the students went home. At that time, all the roads were thronged with grammarians, rhetoricians, philosophers, and theologians. He who had no home of his own would take up his quarters with some fellow student's family. The philosophers and theologians looked out for tutors' posts, taught the children of rich farmers, and received for doing so a pair of new boots, and sometimes also a new coat. A whole troop of them would go off in close ranks like a regiment. They cooked their porridge in common and encamped under the open sky. Each had a bag with him containing a shirt and a pair of socks. The theologians were especially economical. In order not to wear out their boots too quickly, they took them off and carried them on a stick over their shoulders, especially when the road was very muddy. Then they tucked up their breeches over their knees and waded bravely through the pools and puddles. Whenever they spied a village near the highway, they at once left it, approached the house which seemed the most considerable, and began with loud voices to sing a psalm. The master of the house, an old Cossack, engaged in agriculture, would listen for a long time with his head propped in his hands. Then, with the tears on his cheeks, say to his wife, "What the students are singing sounds very devout. Bring out some lard and anything else of the kind we have in the house." After thus replenishing their stores, the students would continue their way. The further they went, the smaller grew their numbers as they dispersed to their various houses, and left those whose homes were still further on. On one occasion, during such a march, 3 students left the main road in order to get provisions in some village, since their stock had long been exhausted. This party consisted of the theologian Halava, the philosopher Thomas Brutus, and the rhetorician Tiberius Grabец. The first was a tall youth with broad shoulders and of peculiar character. Everything which came within reach of his fingers he felt obligated to appropriate. Moreover, he was of a very melancholy disposition, and when he had got intoxicated, he hid himself in the most tangled thickets so that the seminary officials had the greatest trouble in finding him. The philosopher Thomas Brutus was a more cheerful character. He liked to lie for a long time on the same spot, smoke his pipe, and when he was merry with wine, he hired a fiddler and danced the tapak. Often he got a whole quantity of beans, thrashings, but this he endured with complete philosophic calm, saying that a man cannot escape his destiny. The rhetorician, Tiberius Grabец, had not yet the right to wear a moustache, to drink brandy or to smoke tobacco. He only wore a small crop of hair, as though his character was at present too little developed. To judge by the great bumps on his forehead, with which he often appeared in the classroom, it might be expected that some day he would be a valiant fighter. Halava and Thomas often pulled his hair as a mark of their special favor, and sent him on their errands. Everything had already come when they left the high road. The sun had just gone down, and the air was still heavy with the heat of the day. The theologian and the philosopher strolled along, smoking in silence, while the rhetorician stuck off the heads of the thistles by the wayside with his stick. The way wound through thick woods of oak and walnut. Green hills alternated here and there with meadows. Twice already they had seen cornfields, from which they concluded that they were near some village. But an hour had already passed, and no human habitation appeared. The sky was already quite dark, and only a red gleam lingered on the western horizon. "The deuce," said the philosopher Thomas Brutus. "I was almost certain we would soon reach a village." The theologian still remained silent, looked round him, then put his pipe again between his teeth, and all three continued their way. "Good heavens!" exclaimed the philosopher, and stood still. "Now the road itself is disappearing." "Perhaps we shall find a farm further on," answered the theologian, without taking his pipe out of his mouth. Meanwhile, the night had descended. Clouds increased the darkness, and according to all appearance there was no chance of moon or stars appearing. The seminarists found that they had lost their way altogether. After the philosopher had vainly sought for a footpath, he exclaimed, "Where have we got to?" The theologian thought for a while and said, "Yes, it is really dark." The rhetorician went on one side, lay on the ground, and groped for a path, but his hands encountered only foxholes. All around lay a huge steep over which no one seemed to have passed. The wanderers made several efforts to get forward, but the landscape grew wilder and more inhospitable. The philosopher tried to shout, but his voice was lost in vacancy. No one answered. Only some moments later, they heard a faint groaning sound, like the whimpering of a wolf. "Curse it all! What shall we do?" said the philosopher. "Why, just stop here and spend the night in the open air," answered the theologian. So saying, he felt in his pocket, brought out his timber and steel, and lit his pipe. But the philosopher couldn't agree with this proposal. He was not accustomed to sleep till he had first eaten 5 pounds of bread and 5 of dripping, and so he now felt an intolerable emptiness in his stomach. Besides, in spite of his cheerful temperament, he was a little afraid of the wolves. "No, Halava," he said, "that won't do. To lie down like a dog and without any supper? Let us try once more. Perhaps we shall find a house. And the consolation of having a glass of brandy to drink before going to sleep." At the word brandy, the theologian spat on the side and said, "Yes, of course we can't remain all night in the open air." The students went on, and to their great joy, they heard the barking of dogs in the distance. After listening a while to see from which direction the barking came, they went on their way with new courage, and soon espied a light. "A village! By heavens, a village!" exclaimed the philosopher. His supposition proved correct. They soon saw 2 or 3 houses built round the courtyard. Lights glimmered in the windows, and before the fence stood a number of trees. The students looked through crevices of the gates and saw a courtyard in which stood a large number of rowing tradesmen's carts. In the sky there were no fewer clouds, and here and there a star was visible. "See, brother," one of them said, "we must now cry halt. Cost what it may, we must find entrance and night's lodging." The 3 students knocked together at the gate and cried, "Open!" The door of one of the houses creaked on its hinges, and an old woman wrapped in a sheepskin appeared. "Who is there?" she exclaimed, coughing loudly. "Let us spend the night here, mother. We have lost our way. Our stomachs are empty, and we do not want to spend the night out of doors." "But what sort of people are you?" "Quite harmless people, the theologian Kalava, the philosopher Brutus, and the rhetorician Gorobets." "It is impossible," answered the old woman. "The whole house is full of people, and every corner occupied. Where can I put you up? You're big and heavy enough to break the house down. I know these philosophers and theologians. When once one takes them in, they eat one out of house and home. Go further on, there's no room here for you." "Have pity on us, mother. How can you be so heartless? Don't let Christian perish. Put us up where you like, and if we eat up your provisions or do any other damage, may our hands wither up, and all the punishment of heaven light on us." The old woman seemed a little touched. "Well," she said after a few moments' consideration, "I will let you in, but I must put you in different rooms, for I should have no quiet if you were all together at night." "Do just as you like. We won't say any more about it," answered the students. The gates moved heavily on their hinges, and they entered the courtyard. "Well now, mother," said the philosopher, following the old woman, "if you had a little scrap of something, by heavens, my stomach is as empty as a drum. I have not had a bit of bread in my mouth since early this morning." "Didn't I say so?" replied the old woman. "There you go, begging at once. But I have no food in the house, nor any fire." "But we will pay for everything," continued the philosopher. "We will pay early tomorrow in cash. Go on and be content with what you get. You're fine fellows whom the devil has brought here." Her reply greatly depressed the philosopher Thomas. But suddenly his nose caught the odor of dried fish. He looked at the breeches of the theologian, who walked by his side, and saw a huge fish's tail sticking out of his pocket. The latter had already seized the opportunity to steal a whole fish from one of the carts standing in the courtyard. He hadn't done this from hunger so much as from the force of habit. He had quite forgotten the fish, and was looking about to see whether he could not find something else to appropriate. Then the philosopher put his hand in the theologian's pocket, as though it were his own, and laid hold of his prize. The old woman found a special resting place for each student. The rhetorician she put in a shed, the theologian in an empty storeroom, and the philosopher in a sheep's stall. As soon as the philosopher was alone, he devoured the fish in twinkling, examined the fence which enclosed the stall, kicked away a pig from neighboring stall, which had inquiringly inserted its nose through a crevice, and lay down on his right side to sleep like a corpse. Then the low door opened, and the old woman came crouching into the stall. "Well, mother, what do you want here?" asked the philosopher. She made no answer, but came with outstretched arms towards him. The philosopher shrank back, but she still approached, as though she wished to lay hold of him. A terrible fright seized him, for he saw the old hag's eyes sparkle in an extraordinary way. "Away with you, old witch! Away with you!" he shouted. But she still stretched her hands after him. He jumped up in order to rush out, but she placed herself before the door, fixed her glowing eyes upon him, and again approached him. The philosopher tried to push her away with his hands, but to his astonishment he found that he could neither lift his hands, nor move his legs, nor utter an audible word. He only heard his heart beating, and saw the old woman approach him, place his hands crosswise on his breast, and bend his head down. Then, with the agility of a cat, she sprang on his shoulders, struck him on the side with a broom, and he began to run like a racehorse, carrying her on his shoulders. All this happened with such swiftness that the philosopher could scarcely collect his thoughts. He laid hold of his knees with both hands in order to stop his legs from running, but to his great astonishment they kept moving forward against his will, making rapid springs like a Caucasian horse. Not till the house had been left behind them, and a wide plain stretched before them, bordered on one side by a black gloomy wood, did he say to himself, "Ah, it is a witch." The half-moon shone pale and high in the sky. Its mild light, still more subdued by intervening clouds, fell like transparent veil on the earth. Woods, meadows, hills, and valleys all seemed to be sleeping with open eyes. Nowhere was a breath of air stirring. The atmosphere was moist and warm. The shadows of the trees and bushes fell sharply defined on the sloping plain. Such was the night through which the philosopher Thomas Brutus sped with his strange rider. A strange, oppressive, and yet sweet sensation took possession of his heart. He looked down, and saw how the grass beneath his feet seemed to be quite deep and far away. Over it there flowed a flood of crystal clear water, and the grassy plain looked like a bottom of transparent sea. He saw his own image, and that of the old woman whom he carried on his back, clearly reflected in it. Then he beheld how, instead of the moon, a strange sun shone there. He heard the deep tones of bells, and saw them swinging. He saw a withered Nixie rise from a bed of tall reeds. She turned to him, and her face was clearly visible, and she sang a song which penetrated his soul. Then she approached him and nearly reached the surface of the water, on which she burst into the laughter and again disappeared. Did he see it, or did he not see it? Was he dreaming, or was he awake? But what was the below, wind or music? It sounded and drew nearer and penetrated his soul like a song that rose and fell. What is it? He thought as he gazed into the depths, and still sped rapidly along. The perspiration flowed through him in streams. He experienced simultaneously a strange feeling of oppression and delight in all his being. Often he felt as though he had no longer a heart, and pressed his hand on his breast with alarm. Weary to death, he began to repeat all prayers which he knew, and all the formulas of exorcism against evil spirits. Suddenly, he experienced a certain relief. He felt that his pace was slackening. The witch weighed less heavily on his shoulders, and the thick herbage of the plain was again beneath his feet, with nothing especial to remark about it. Splendid, thought the philosopher Thomas, and began to repeat his exorcism in a still louder voice. Then, suddenly, he wrenched himself away from under the witch and sprang on her back in his turn. She began to run, with short, trembling steps indeed, but so rapidly that he could hardly breathe. So swiftly did she run that she hardly seemed to touch the ground. They were still on the plain, but owing to the rapidity of their flight, everything seemed indistinct and confused before his eyes. He seized the stick that was lying on the ground and began to belabor the hag with all his might. She uttered a wild cry, which at first sounded raging and threatening. Then it became gradually weaker and more gentle, till at last it sounded quite low, like the pleasant tones of a silver bell, so that it penetrated his innermost soul. Involuntarily, the thought passed through his mind, "Is she really an old woman?" "Ah, I can go no further," she said in a faint voice, and sank to earth. He knelt beside her. "Thank you for headbutt!" "Hi Mayo, hi Yaruki, thank you for headbutt!" Okay, Yaruki. Okay, let's continue. Small break. Гоголь душнило, да, но многие русские писатели душнило. И никто так не душнит, как Достоевский. Гоголь еще ничего. Okay. So, he knelt beside her and looked in her eyes. The dawn was red in the sky, and in the distance glimmered the gilt domes of the churches of Kiev. Before him lay a beautiful maiden with thick disheveled hair and long eyelashes. Unconsciously, she had stretched out her white bare arms, and her tear-filled eyes gazed at the sky. Thomas trembled like an aspen leaf. Sympathy and a strange feeling of excitement and hitherto known fear overpowered him. He began to run with all his might. His heart beat violently, and he couldn't explain to himself what a strange new feeling had seized him. He didn't wish to return to the village, but hastened towards Kiev, thinking all the way as he went of his weird, unaccountable adventure. There were hardly any students left in the town. They were all scattered about the country and had either taken tutors' posts or simply lived without occupation. For at the farms in Little Russia one can live comfortably and at ease without paying a farthing. The great half-decayed building in which the seminary was established was completely empty, and however much the philosopher searched in all its corners for a piece of lard and bread, he couldn't find even one of the hard biscuits which the seminarists were in the habit of hiding. But the philosopher found the means of extricating himself from his difficulties by making friends with a certain young widow in the marketplace who sold ribbons, etc. The same evening he found himself being stuffed with cakes and fowl. In fact, it is impossible to say how many things were placed before him on a little table in an arbor shaded by cherry trees. Later on, the same evening, the philosopher was to be seen in an alehouse. He lay on the bench, smoked his pipe in his usual way, and threw the Jewish publication a gold piece. He had a jug of ale standing before him, looked on all who went in and out in a cold-blooded, self-satisfied way, and thought no more of his strange adventure. Okay, this is a little break time. Достоевский крутой, он хотя бы красиво душнит. Когда Гоголь душно душнит? Ну, не знаю, мне кажется, это вкусовщина все-таки. Мне гоголевское душнение, в принципе, и нравится даже. А вот Достоевское душнение не очень хорошо давалось. Ну, по крайней мере, в школьные времена. Если честно, уже ни Гоголя, ни Достоевского не читала как несколько лет. Хотя, может быть, и стоило бы. Okay, we're taking a small pause. I need to drink. But very important question though so far. Are you following the story, guys? Because like I think the language is pretty complicated, but like because I know the story in Russian, like it's way easier for me to understand what's going on. But also my reading is god awful because it's a very, you know, very literature English, so it's a bit hard to read sometimes. But are you following the story? Basically, in case you didn't catch it, the three students. Oh wait a sec. You came in late. Oh, thank you for hydrate redeem. You came in late. Well, I mean, let me explain. I because I was reading, I kind of missed the chat and the scroll. But yeah, basically 3 students went to get some food in the village. Like they went to look for a village to ask for some food and like place where they could sleep because it was very late at night. And instead they apparently accidentally stumbled upon a witch's house, and one of the students got turned into the witch's vehicle, the means of transport, the horse for the night. But then because he like tried to pray and you like say whatever exorcism stuff he knows, he managed to like break the spell that she put on him, and yeah, basically he beat her with a stick and he sat on her shoulders, and then he ran away when he realized it's a witch and she looks young, and he was like, yeah, I'm not dealing with that anymore. It's basically that simple. But like as somebody mentioned in my Russian speaking chat, because yes, I am streaming to like YouTube as well, basically this author Nikolai Vasilievich Gogol, he likes to use a lot of words. Like I think it's just in general a very Eastern European author's characteristic to use a lot of words when writing literature. But like as it was mentioned, Nikolai Vasilievich is also very, very much into using a lot of words. Mayo! Ай-яй-яй! Mayo! Братьев Карамазовых я только начинала, так что не могу точно сказать, но у них тоже живенькая. Блин, я даже уже не помню, когда я последний раз читала «Братьев Карамазовых». Надо мне как-нибудь перечитать всю эту школьную литературу. А то, знаешь, ну, типа, когда ты в школе учишься, типа, такой, блин, заставляют, неинтересно. А уже сейчас-то никто не заставляет. Можно, наконец, спокойно в своем темпе прочитать все, что я хочу прочитать. У Гоголя все подряд душноватенькое. Да неправда. Ну, не знаю, мне гоголевское душнение, в принципе, заходит. Но не знаю. Это правда, Ника. Mayo on both resources. Damn. Mayo is everywhere. So yeah. Anyways, what was I saying? I forgot. Oh yes, I was saying that Google likes to use a lot of words. That is true. That is true. But I think we're now finally getting to like the better part of the story, to the juicier one. So let me do a little stretch. Drink some tea. No, Mayo. I am in your walls. Anyways, let us continue. About this time, a report spread about that the daughter of a rich colonel, whose estate lay about 50 versts distant from Kiev, had returned home one day from a walk in a quite broken-down condition. She had scarcely enough strength to reach her father's house. Now she lay dying, and had expressed a wish that for 3 days after her death, the prayers for the dead should be recited by a Kiev seminarist named Thomas Brutus. This fact was communicated to the philosopher by the rector of the seminary himself, who sent for him to his room and told him that he must start at once, as a rich colonel had sent his servants and a kibitka for him. The philosopher trembled, and was seized by an uncomfortable feeling which he couldn't define. He had a gloomy foreboding that some evil was about to befall him. Without knowing why, he declared that he had died, that he did not wish to go. "Listen, Thomas," said the rector, who under certain circumstances spoke very politely to his pupils. "I have no idea of asking you whether you wish to go or not. I only tell you that if you think of disobeying, I'll have you so soundly flogged on the back with young birch rods that you need not think of having a bath for a long time." The philosopher scratched the back of his head and went out silently, intending to make himself scarce at the first opportunity. Lost in thought, he descended the steep flight of steps which led to the courtyard, thickly planted with poplars. There he remained standing for a moment, and heard quite distinctly the rector giving orders in a loud voice to his steward, and to another person, probably one of the messengers sent by the colonel. "Thank you, master, for the peeled barley and the eggs," said the rector, "and tell him that as soon as the books which he mentions in his note are ready, I will send them. I have already given them to a clerk to be copied. And don't forget to remind your master that he has some excellent fish, especially prime sturgeon, in his ponds. He might send me some when he has the opportunity, as there in the market the fish are bad and dear. And you, Juntuk, give the colonel's man a glass of brandy. And mind you tied up the philosopher, or he will show you a clean pair of heels." "Listen to the scoundrel," thought the philosopher. "He has smelt a rat, the long-legged stork." He descended into the courtyard and beheld there a kibitka, which he at first took for a barn on wheels. It was, in fact, as roomy as a kiln, so that bricks might have been made inside it. It was one of those remarkable Krakow vehicles in which Jews traveled from town to town in scores, wherever they thought they would find the market. 6 stout, strong, though somewhat elderly Cossacks were standing by it. Their gold-braided coats of fine cloth showed that their master was rich of some importance, and certain little scars testified to their valorous on the battlefield. "What can I do?" thought the philosopher. "There's no escaping one's destiny." So he stepped up to the Cossacks and said, "Good day, comrades." "Welcome, Mr. Philosopher," some of them answered. "Well, I am to travel with you. It is a magnificent vehicle," he continued as he got into it. "If there were only musicians present, one might dance in it." "Yes, it is a roomy carriage," said one of the Cossacks, taking his seat by the coachman. The latter had tied a cloth round his head, as he had already found an opportunity of pawning his cap in the alehouse. The other 5, with the philosopher, got into the capacious kibitka and sat upon sacks which were filled with all sorts of articles purchased in the city. "I should like to know," said the philosopher, "if this equipage were laden with salt or iron, how many horses would be required to draw it?" Yes, said the Cossack who sat by the coachman, after thinking a short time. It would require a good many horses. After giving the satisfactory answer, the Cossack considered himself entitled to remain silent for a whole of the rest of the journey. The philosopher would gladly have found out who the colonel was, and what sort of a character he had. He was also curious to know about his daughter, who had returned home in such a strange way, and now lay dying, and whose destiny seemed to be mingled with his own, and wanted to know the sort of life that was lived in the colonel's house. But the Cossacks were probably philosophers like himself. For an answer to his inquiries, they only blew clouds of tobacco and settled themselves more comfortably on their sacks. Meanwhile, one of them addressed to the coachman on the box a brief command. "Keep your eyes open, Averka. You old sleepyhead, and when you come to the alehouse on the road of Krylov, don't forget to pull up and wake me up and the other fellows if we're asleep." Then he began to snore pretty loud. But in any case, his admonition was quite superfluous, for scarcely had the enormous equipage begun to approach the aforesaid alehouse. Then they all cried with one mouth, "Halt! Halt!" Besides this, Averka's house was accustomed to stop outside every inn of its own accord. In spite of the intense July heat, they all got out and entered the low, dirty room where a Jewish innkeeper received them in a friendly way as all acquaintances. He brought in the skits of long coat, some sausages, and laid them on the table, where, though forbidden by the Talmud, they looked very seductive. All sat down at the table, and it was not long before each of the guests had an earthenware jug standing in front of him. The philosopher Thomas had to take part in the feast, and as the little Russians, when they're intoxicated, always begin to kiss each other or to weep, the whole room soon began to echo with demonstrations of affection. Come here, spirit, let me embrace thee. Come here, Dorosh, let me press you to my heart." One Cossack with grey moustache, the eldest of them all, leaned his hand on his head and began to weep bitterly because he was an orphan and alone in God's wide world. Another tall, loquacious man did his best to comfort him, saying, "Don't weep, for God's sake, don't weep, for over there God knows best." The Cossack, who had been addressed as Dorosh, was full of curiosity and addressed many questions to the philosopher Thomas. "I should like to know," he said, "what you learn in your seminary. Do you learn the same things as the deacon reads to us in church, or something else?" "Don't ask," said the consoler. "Let them learn what they like. God knows what is to happen. God knows everything." "No, I will know," answered Dorosh. "I will know what is written in their books. Perhaps it is something quite different from that in Diacon's book." "Oh, good heavens," said the other. "Why all this talk? It is God's will, and one cannot change God's arrangements." "But I will know everything that is written. I will enter the seminary too. By heaven I will." "Do you think perhaps I couldn't learn? I will learn everything. Everything." "Oh heavens," exclaimed the consoler, and let his head sink on the table, for he could no longer hold it upright. The other Cossacks talked about the nobility and why there was a moon in the sky. When the philosopher Thomas saw the state they were in, he determined to profit by it and to make his escape. In the first place, he turned to the grey-headed Cossack, who was lamenting the loss of his parents. "But, little uncle," he said to him, "why do you weep so? I too am an orphan. Let me go, children. Why do you want me?" "Let him go," said some of them. "He is an orphan. Let him go where he likes." They were about to take him outside themselves, when the one who had displayed a special thirst for knowledge stopped them, saying, "No, I want to talk with him about the seminary. I am going to the seminary myself." Moreover, it was not yet certain whether the philosopher could have executed his project of flight, for when he tried to rise from his chair, he felt as though his feet were made of wood, and he began to see such a number of doors leading out of the room that it would have been difficult for him to have found the right one. It was until evening that the company remembered that they must continue their journey. They crowded into the kibitka, whipped up the horses, and struck up a song, the words and sense of which were hard to understand. During a great part of the night, they wandered about, having lost the road which they ought to have been able to find blindfolded. At last they drove down the steep descent into the valley, and the philosopher noticed, by the sides of the road, hedges behind which he caught glimpses of small trees and house roofs. All this belonged to the colonel's estate. It was already long past midnight. The sky was dark, though little stars glimmered here and there. No light was to be seen in any of the houses. They drove into a large courtyard, while the dogs barked. On all sides were barns and cottages with thatched roofs. Just opposite the gateway was a house, which was larger than the others and seemed to be the colonel's dwelling. The kibitka stopped before a small barn, and the travelers hastened into it and laid themselves down to sleep. The philosopher, however, attempted to look at the exterior of the house, but rub his eyes as he might, he could distinguish nothing. The house seemed to turn into a bear, and the chimney into the rector of the seminary. Then he gave it up and lay down to sleep. When he woke up the next morning, the whole house was in commotion. The young lady had died during the night. The servants ran hither and thither in a distant state. The old women wept and lamented, and a number of curious people gazed through the enclosure into the courtyard, as though there were something special to be seen. The philosopher began to inspect the locality and the buildings, which he hadn't been able to do during the night. The colonel's house was one of those low, small buildings, such as used formerly to be constructed in Russia. It was thatched with straw, a small high peaked gable, with a window shaped like an eye, was painted all over with blue and yellow flowers and red crescent moons. It rested on little oaken pillars, which were round above the middle, hexagonal below, and whose capitals were adorned with quaint carvings. Under this gable was a small staircase with seats at the foot of it on either side. The walls of the house were supported by similar pillars. Before the house stood a large pear tree of pyramidal shape, whose leaves incessantly trembled. A double row of buildings formed a broad street leading up to Colonel's house. Behind the bars near the entrance gate stood 2 three-cornered wine houses, also thatched with straw. Each of the stone walls had a door in it and was covered with all kinds of paintings. On one was represented a Cossack sitting on a barrel and swinging a large pitcher over his head. It bore the inscription, "I will drink all that." Elsewhere were painted large and small bottles, a beautiful girl, a running horse, a pipe, and a drum bearing the words, "Wine is the Cossack's joy." In the loft of one of the barns, one saw through a huge round window a drum and some trumpets. At the gate there stood 2 cannons. All this showed that the colonel loved a cheerful life, and the whole place often rang with sounds of merriment. Before the gate were 2 windmills, and behind the house gardens sloped away. Through the treetops the dark chimneys of peasants' houses were visible. The whole village lay on a broad, even plateau in the middle of a mountain slope, which culminated in a steep summit on the north side. When seen from below, it looked still steeper. Here and there on the top of irregular stems of the thick steep brooms showed in dark relief against the blue sky. The bare clay soil made a melancholy impression, worn as it was into deep furrows by rainwater. On the same slope there stood 2 cottages, and over one of them a huge apple tree spread its branches. The roots were supported by small props, whose interstices were filled with mold. The apples, which were blown off by the wind, rolled down to the courtyard below. A road wound round the mountain to the village. When the philosopher looked at this steep slope and remembered his journey of the night before, he came to the conclusion that either the colonel's houses were very sagacious, or that the Cossacks must have very strong heads, as they ventured even when the worst of drink on such a road with huge kibitka. When the philosopher turned and looked in the opposite direction, he saw quite another picture. The village reached down to the plain. Meadows stretched away to immense distance, their bright green growing gradually dark. Far away, about 20 versts off, many other villages were visible. To the right of these meadows were chains of hills, and in the remote distance one saw a Dnieper shimmer and sparkle like a mirror of steel. "What a splendid country," said the philosopher to himself. "It must be fine to live here. One could catch fish in the Dnieper and in the ponds, and shoot the snare partridges and bustards. There must be quantities here. Much fruit might be dried here and sold in the town, or better still, brandy might be distilled from it, for fruit brandy is the best of all. But what prevents me thinking of my escape after all?" Behind the hedge he saw a little path, which was almost entirely concealed by the high grass of the steppe. The philosopher approached it mechanically, meaning at first to walk a little along it unobserved, and then quite quietly to gain the open country behind the peasants' houses. Suddenly he felt the pressure of a fairly heavy hand on his shoulder. Behind him stood the same old Cossack who yesterday had so bitterly lamented the death of his father and mother, and his own loneliness. "You're giving yourself useless trouble, Mr. Philosopher, if you think you can escape from us," he said. "One cannot run away here, and besides, the roads are too bad for walkers. Come to the colonel. He has been waiting for you for some time in his room." "Yes, of course. What are you talking about? I will come with the greatest pleasure," said the philosopher, and followed the Cossack. The colonel was an elderly man. His mustache was grey, and his face wore the signs of deep sadness. He sat in his room by a table with his head propped on both hands. He seemed about 55, but his attitude of utter despair and the pallor on his face showed that his heart had been suddenly broken, and that all his former cheerfulness had forever disappeared. When Thomas entered with the Cossack, he answered their deep bows with a slight inclination of the head. "Who are you? Whence do you come? And what is your profession, my good man?" asked the colonel in an even voice, neither friendly nor austere. "I am a student of philosophy. My name is Thomas Brutus." "And who was your father?" "I don't know, sir." "And your mother?" "I don't know either. I know that I must have had a mother, but who she was and where she lived, by heavens, I do not know." The colonel was silent, and seemed for a moment lost in thought. "Where did you come to know my daughter?" "I don't know her, gracious sir. I declared I do not know her." "Why then has she chosen you, and no one else, to offer up prayers for her?" The philosopher shrugged his shoulders. "God only knows. It is a well-known fact that grand people often demand things which the most learned man cannot comprehend. And does not proverb say, 'Duns devil as the Lord commands'?" "Aren't you talking nonsense, Mr. Philosopher?" "May the lightning strike me on the spot if I lie." "If she had only lived a moment longer," said the colonel sadly, "then I had certainly found out everything. She said, 'Let no one offer up prayers for me, but send father at once to the seminary in Kiev for the student Thomas Brutus. He shall pray 3 nights running for my sinful soul. He knows.' But what he really knows, she never said. The poor dove could speak no more and died. Good man, you're probably well known for your sanctity and devout life, and she has perhaps heard of you." "What? Of me?" said the philosopher, and took a step backward in amazement. "I and sanctity?" he exclaimed, and stared at the colonel. God help us, gracious sir. What are you saying? It was only last Holy Thursday that I paid a visit to the tart shop. Well, she must at any rate have had some reason for making the arrangement, and you must begin your duties today. I should like to remark to your honor, naturally everyone knows the Holy Scripture at all can in his measure, but I believe it would be better on this occasion to send for a diakon or subdiakon. They're learned people, and they know exactly what is to be done. I have not got a good voice, nor any official standing. You may say what you like, but I shall carry out all my dove's wishes. If you read the prayers for 3 nights through in the proper way, I will reward you, and if not, I advise the devil himself not to oppose me. The colonel spoke the last words in such an emphatic way that the philosopher quite understood them. Follow me, said the colonel. They went into the hall. The colonel opened the door which was opposite his own. The philosopher remained for a few minutes in the hall in order to look about him. Then he stepped over the threshold with a certain nervousness. The whole floor of the room was covered with red cloth. In a corner, under the icons of the saints on a table covered with a gold-bordered velvet cloth, lay the body of the girl. Tall candles, round which were bound branches of the kalina, stood at her head and feet, and burned dimly in the broad daylight. The face of the dead was not to be seen. As the inconsolable father sat before his daughter with his back turned to the philosopher, the words which the latter overheard filled him with a certain fear. I do not mourn, my daughter, that in the flower of young age you have prematurely left the earth to my grief, but I mourn, my dove, that I do not know my deadly enemy who caused your death. Had I only known that anyone could even conceive the idea of insulting you, or of speaking a disrespectful word to you, I swear by heavens he would never have seen his children again, if he had been as old as myself, nor his father and mother, if he had been young, and I would have thrown his corpse to the birds of the air, and the wild beasts of the steppe. But woe is me, my flower, my dove, my light, I will spend the remainder of my life without joy, and wipe the bitter tears which flow out of my old eyes, while my enemy will rejoice and laugh in secret over the helpless old man. He paused, overpowered by grief, and streams of tears flowed down his cheeks. The philosopher was deeply affected by the sight of such inconsolable sorrow. He coughed gently in order to clear his throat. The colonel turned and signed to him to take his place at the head of the dead girl, before a little prayer desk on which some books lay. I can manage to hold out for 3 nights, thought the philosopher, and then the colonel will fill both my pockets with ducats. He approached the dead girl, and after coughing once more, began to read, without paying attention to anything else, and firmly resolved not to look at her face. Soon there was deep silence, and he saw that the colonel had left the room. Slowly he turned his head in order to look at the corpse. A violent shudder thrilled through him. Before him lay a form of such beauty as is seldom seen upon earth. It seemed to him that never in a single face had so much intensity of expression and harmony of feature been united. Her brow, soft as snow and pure as silver, seemed to be thinking. The fine, regular eyebrows shadowed proudly the closed eyes, whose lashes gently rested on her cheeks, which seemed to glow with secret longing. Her lips still appeared to smile, but at the same time he saw something in these features which appalled him. A terrible depression seized his heart, as when in the midst of dance and song someone begins to chant a dirge. He felt as though those ruby lips were colored with his own heart's blood. Moreover, her face seemed dreadfully familiar. "The witch!" cried out in a voice which sounded strange to himself. Then he turned away and began to read the prayers with white cheeks. It was the witch whom he had killed. So, we're gonna take another pause here, because there is a second part. after this. So, oh, thank you for hydrator, Demo. Or was it the old one? Sure. But let me hydrate anyways. I need it. Good evening, Connor. Good evening. Yes, it's very much a story time today. And it's a very sophisticated story time. Thank you, kitten. Thank you, and welcome. Hi. How are you doing? Меня очень сильно с чтением, пониманием помогла репетитор по литературе. С ней все становилось очень интересным. У меня вот репетитора никогда не было. Я сам себе репетитор. Так что вот наверстываю упущенное на старости лет. By the way, again, for people who confused, I also currently stream on YouTube, and there are some potentially Russian people watching me. Well, at least one Russian-speaking person watches me, so sometimes I might say some stuff in Russian because I'm just replying. So don't be scared if you hear some sudden Russian. Oh, let me stretch. I'm shrimping. One day I will have a proper PC set up with some proper chair so I can sit back properly while reading, you know, maybe with a blanket or something, but right now I'm shrimp reading. Hello, Mr. Pio. Hello on YouTube. Hello, Mr. Pio. Hi. So, same question again. Are you guys still following the story? Because I think we're finally getting to the more comprehensive part. Once again, we are past all the village descriptions. But I'm curious if you're following the storyline so far. If not, I can give you, you know, like a little, how to say it, like a summary of this part so far. Honestly, like, I'm having trouble reading some words because I don't even know their meanings, but I'm really tempted to reread this story in Russian at some point again, just to, like, you know, because it's been ages since I read it myself. It's mostly school type of literature. So you kind of, because you're kind of forced to read it at school, you don't read it that much. But like now, when I'm finally an adult and not a school student anymore, could read it and you know, look at it with my new adult perspective. But yeah, basically, just to summarize so far, like, our main character was summoned by the colonel because his dying daughter said that she wants a very specific person to pray on her body during the night, like after her death, because, you know, it's kind of like a religious thingy. But basically, his daughter is the witch that our main character apparently killed. Like, I don't think he meant to kill her really, but because she was a witch and he got scared, so he like, whoa, exorcised her and beat her with a stick, and she basically got very badly injured and died. And because she's a witch, she's like, you know what, you're not getting away from me. So she is now, well, technically her father, but because she arranged it, she's forcing him to read the prayers at night in church over her body. And this is where the spooky part starts. Well, it's not as spooky, but you know. So yeah, okay, let me stretch. Let's try to shrimp a little less, but I can't promise that I will be shrimping. Okay. Now, the next part. When the sun had sunk below the horizon, the corpse was carried into the church. The philosopher supported one corner of the black-draped coffin upon his shoulder, and felt an ice-cold shiver run through his body. The colonel walked in front of him, with his right hand resting on the edge of the coffin. The wooden church, black with age and overgrown with green liches, stood quiet at the end of the village in gloomy solitude. It was adorned with 3 round cupolas, One saw at the first glance that it had not been used for divine worship for a long time. Lighted candles were standing before almost every icon. The coffin was set down before the altar. The old colonel kissed his dead daughter once more, and then left the church together with the bearers of the bier, after he had ordered his servants to look after the philosopher and to take him back to the church after supper. The coffin bearers, when they returned to the house, all laid their hands on the stove. This custom is always observed in Little Russia by those who have seen a corpse. The hunger which the philosopher now began to feel caused him for a while to forget the dead girl altogether. Gradually, all the domestics of the house assembled in the kitchen. It was really a kind of club, where they were accustomed to gather. Even the dogs came to the door, wagging their tails in order to have bones and offal thrown to them. If a servant was sent on an errand, he always found his way into the kitchen to rest there for a while and to smoke a pipe. All the Cossacks of the establishment lay here during the whole day on, and under the benches. In fact, wherever a place could be found to lay down in. Moreover, everyone was always leaving something behind in the kitchen, his cap or his whip or something of the sort. But the numbers of the club were not complete till the evening, when the groom came in after tying up his horses in the stable. The cowherd had shut up his cows in their stalls, and the other collected there, who were not usually seen in the daytime. During supper time, even the tongues of the laziest were set in motion. They talked of all and everything, of the new pair of breeches which someone had ordered for himself, or what might be in the center of the earth, and of the wolf which someone had seen. There were a number of wits in the company, a class which is always represented in Little Russia. The philosopher took his place with the rest in the great circle, which is set round the kitchen door in the open air. Soon, an old woman with a red cap issued from it, bearing with both hands a large vessel full of hot galushkis, which she distributed among them. Each drew out of his pocket a wooden spoon, or a one-pronged wooden fork. As soon as their jaws began to move a little more slowly and their wolfish hunger was somewhat appeased, they began to talk. The conversation, as might be expected, turned on the dead girl. "Is it true," said the young shepherd, "is it true, though I cannot understand it, that our young mistress had traffic with evil spirits?" "Who, the young lady?" answered Dorsch, whose acquaintance the philosopher had already made in the kibitka. "Yes, she was a regular witch. I can swear that she was a witch." "Hold your tongue, Dorsch!" exclaimed another, the one who during the journey had played the part of a consoler. "We have nothing to do with that. May God be merciful to her. One ought not to talk of such things." But Dorsch was not at all inclined to be silent. He had just visited the wine cellar with the steward on important business, and having stooped 2 or 3 times over one of the 2 casks, he had returned in a very cheerful and loquacious mood. "Why do you ask me to be silent?" he answered. "She has ridden on my own shoulders, I swear she has." "Say, uncle," asked the young shepherd, "are there signs by which to recognize a sorcerer?" "No, they're not," answered Dorsch. "Even if you knew the psalter by heart, you could not recognize one." "Yes, Dorsch, it is possible." "Don't talk such nonsense," retorted the former consoler. "It is not for nothing that God has given each some special peculiarity. The learned maintain that every witch has a little tail." "Every old woman is a witch," said gray-headed Cossack quite seriously. "Yes, you're a fine lot," retorted the old woman who entered at that moment with a vessel full of fresh galushkis. "You're great fat pigs." A self-satisfied smile played around the lips of the old Cossack, whose name was Javtuk. When he found that his remark had touched the old woman on a tender point. The shepherd burst into such a deep and loud explosion of laughter, as if 2 oxen were lowing together. This conversation excited in the philosopher a great curiosity, and a wish to obtain more exact information regarding the colonel's daughter. In order to lead the talk back to the subject, he turned to his next neighbor and said, "I should like to know why all the people here think that the young lady was a witch. Has she done harm to anyone or killed them by witchcraft?" "Yes, there are reports of that kind," answered the man whose face was as flat as a shovel. "Who doesn't remember the huntsman Nikita or the... What has the huntsman Nikita to do with it?" asked the philosopher. "Stop, I will tell you the story of Nikita," interrupted Dorosh. "No, I will tell it," said the groom, "for he was my godfather." "I will tell the story of Nikita," said Spirit. "Yes, yes, Spirit shall tell it," exclaimed the whole company, and Spirit began. "You, Mr. Philosopher Thomas, did not know Nikita. Ah, he was an extraordinary man. He knew every dog as though he were his own father. The present huntsman, Mikola, who sits 3 places away from me, is not fit to hold a candle to him, though good enough in his way. But compared to Nikita, he is a mere milksop." "You tell the tale splendidly," exclaimed Dorosh, and nodded as a sign of approval. Spirit continued. "He saw a hare in the field quicker than you can take a pinch of snuff. He only needed to whistle, 'Come here, boy, come here, Borzaya,' and flew away on his horse like the wind, so that you could not say whether he went quicker than the dog, or the dog than he. He could empty a quart pot of brandy in the twinkling of an eye. Ah, he was a splendid huntsman. Only for some time he always had his eyes fixed on the young lady. Either he had fallen in love with her, or she had bewitched him. In short, he went to the dogs. He became a regular old woman. Yes, he became the devil knows what. It is not fitting to relate it." "Very good," remarked Dorosh. "If the young lady only looked at him, he let the reins slip out of his hands, called Bravko instead of Razboy, stumbled, and made all kinds of mistakes. One day, when he was combing a horse, the young lady came to him in the stable. 'Listen, Mikita,' she said, 'I should like for once to set my foot on you.' And he, the booby, was quite delighted and answered, 'Don't only set your foot there, but sit on me altogether.' The young lady lifted her white little foot, and as soon as he saw it, his delight robbed him of his senses. He bowed his neck, the idiot, took her foot in both hands, and began to trot about like a horse all over the place. Whither they went he couldn't say. He returned more dead than alive, and from that time he wasted away and became as dry as a chip of wood. At last someone coming into the stable one day found instead of him only a handful of ashes and an empty jug. He had burned completely out. But it must be said he was a huntsman such as the world cannot match. When Spirit had ended his tale, they all began to vie with one another in praising the deceased huntsman. "And have you heard the story of Chipchicha?" asked Dorsch, turning to Thomas. "No, ha ha! One sees they don't teach you much in your seminary. Well, listen. We have here in our village a Kazakh called Chiptun, a fine fellow. Sometimes indeed he amuses himself by stealing and lying without any reason, but he is a fine fellow for all that. His house is not far away from here. One evening, just about this time, Chiptun and his wife went to bed after they had finished their day's work. Since it was fine weather, Chipchicha went to sleep in the courtyard, and Chiptun his house. No, I mean Chipchicha went to sleep in the house on the bench and Chiptun outside. No, Chipchicha didn't go to sleep on the bench, but on the ground, interrupted the old woman who stood at the door. Dorosh looked at her, then at the ground, then again at her, and said after a pause, "If I tore your dress off your back before all these people, it wouldn't look pretty." The rebuke was effectual. The old woman was silent and did not interrupt again. Dorosh continued. "In the cradle which hung in the middle of the loom lay a 1-year-old child. I do not know whether it was a boy or a girl. Chipchicha had lain down and heard on the other side of the door a dog scratching and howling loud enough to frighten anyone. She was afraid. For women are such simple folk that if one puts out one's tongue at them behind the door in the dark, their hearts sink into their boots. But she thought to herself, I must give this cursed dog one on the snout to stop his howling. So she seized the poker and opened the door. But hardly had she done so than the dog rushed between her legs straight to the cradle. Then Chipchicha saw that it was not a dog but the young lady. And if it had only been the young lady, as she knew her, it wouldn't have mattered, but she looked quite blue, and her eyes sparkled like fiery coals. She seized the child, bit its throat, and began to suck its blood. Chipchicha shrieked, "Ah, my darling child!" and rushed out of the room. Then she saw that the house door was shut and rushed up to the attic and sat there, the stupid woman trembling all over. Then the young lady came after her and beat her too. Poor fool! The next morning Chiptun carried his wife, all beaten and wounded, down from the attic, and the next day she died. Such strange things happen in the world. One may wear fine clothes, but that doesn't matter. A witch is and remains a witch. After telling his story, Dorosh looked around him with a complacent air and cleaned out his pipe with his little finger in order to fill it again. The story of the witch had made a deep impression on all, and each of them had something to say about her. One had seen her come to the door of his house in form of a heirik. From others she had stolen their caps or their pipes. She had cut off their hair plaits of many girls in the village and drunk whole pints of the blood of others. At last the whole company observed that they had gossiped over their time, for it was already night. All looked for a sleeping place, some in the kitchen, and others in the barn or the courtyard. "Now, Mr. Thomas, it is time that we go to the dead," said the great-haired Cossack, turning the philosopher. All four, Spirit, Dorish, and Old Cossack, and the philosopher, betook themselves to the church, keeping off with their whips the wild dogs who roamed about the roads in great numbers, and bit the sticks of passers-by in sheer malice. Although the philosopher had seized the opportunity of tortifying himself beforehand with a stiff glass of brandy, yet he felt a certain secret fear which increased as he approached the church, which was lit up within. The strange tales he had heard had made a deep impression on his imagination. They had passed the thick hedges and trees, and the country became more open. At last they reached the small enclosure round the church. Behind it there were no more trees, but a huge empty plain dimly visible in the darkness. The three Cossacks ascended the steep steps with Thomas and entered the church. Here they left the philosopher, expressing their hope that he would successfully accomplish his duties, and locked him in as their master had ordered. He was left alone. At first he yawned, then he stretched himself, blew on both hands, and finally looked round him. In the middle of the church stood the black bier. Before the dark pictures of saints burned the candles, whose light only illuminated the icons and cast a faint glimmer into the body of the church. All the corners were in complete darkness. The lofty icons seemed to be considerable age. Only a little of their original gilt remained on their broken traceries. The faces of the saints had become quite black and looked uncanny. Once more the philosopher cast a glance around him. "Bother it," said he to himself. "What is there to be afraid about? No living creature can get in. And as for the dead and those who come from the other side, I can protect myself with such effectual prayers that they cannot touch me with the tips of their fingers. There's nothing to fear," he repeated, swinging his arms. "Let us begin the prayers." As he approached one of the side aisles, he noticed 2 packets of candles, which had been placed there. "That is fine," he thought. I must illuminate the whole church, till it is as bright as day. What a pity that one cannot smoke in it." He began to light the candles on all the wall brackets and all the candelabra, as well as those already burning before the holy pictures. Soon the whole church was brilliantly lit up. Only the darkness in the roof above seemed still denser by contrast, and the faces of the saints peering out of the frames looked as unearthly as before. He approached the bier, looked nervously at the face of the dead girl, could not help shuddering slightly, and involuntarily closed his eyes. What terrible and extraordinary beauty! He turned away and tried to go to one side. But the strange curiosity and peculiar fascination which men feel in moments of fear compelled him to look again and again, though with a similar shudder. And in truth there was something terrible about the beauty of the dead girl. Perhaps she would not have inspired so much fear had she been less beautiful, but there was nothing ghastly or deathlike in the face, which were rather an expression of life. And it seemed to the philosopher as though she were watching him from under her closed eyelids. He even thought he saw a tear roll from under the eyelash of her right eye, but then when it was halfway down her cheek, he saw that it was a drop of blood. He quickly went into one of the stalls, opened his book and began to read the prayers in a very loud voice in order to keep up his courage. His deep voice sounded strange to himself in a grave-like silence. It aroused no echo in the silent and desolate wooden walls of the church. "What is there to be afraid of?" he thought to himself. "She will not rise from her bier, since she fears God's word. She will remain quietly resting. Yes, and what sort of a Cossack would I be, if I were afraid? The fact is, I have drunk a little too much. That is why I feel so queer. Let me take a pinch of snuff. It is really excellent, first rate." At the same time, he cast a furtive glance over the pages of the prayer book towards the bier, and involuntarily he said to himself, "There, see, she is getting up. Her head is already above the edge of the coffin." But a death-like silence prevailed. The coffin was motionless, and all the candles shone steadily. It was an awe-inspiring sight. This church lit up at midnight, with the corpse in the midst, and no living soul near but one. The philosopher began to sing in various keys, in order to stifle his fears. But every moment he glanced across the coffin, and involuntarily the question became to his lips, "Suppose she rose up, after all?" Hi! Hello! Thank you for the follow! Thank you, welcome thank you for the follow. Hi, Maiko Kobayashi, hello! Welcome, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit distracted from chat. Basically, the name of the story is on the screen. Yeah, the title of the story is on the screen, so feel free to check it out as well. And it's basically a story written by a Russian author. Yes. But welcome everyone. Let's take a tiny break. Because I also need to hydrate. Otherwise, my voice is absolutely dying. But, oh man, I am enjoying it so much. I should do more reading at some point. Okay. Okay, let's continue. Suppose she rose up after all. He raised his head, then he looked round him wildly and rubbed his eyes. Yes, she was no longer lying in the coffin, but sitting upright. He turned away his eyes, but at once looked again, terrified at the coffin. She stood up, and then she walked with closed eyes through the church, stretching out her arms as though she wanted to seize someone. She now came straight towards him. Full of alarm, he traced with his finger a circle around himself. Then in a loud voice, he began to recite the prayers and formulas of exorcism, which he had learned from a monk who had often seen witches and evil spirits. She had almost reached the edge of the circle, which she had traced, but it was evident that she had not the power to enter it. Her face wore a blush tint, like that one of who has been several days dead. Thomas had not the courage to look at her, so terrible was her appearance. Her teeth chattered and she opened her dead eyes. But as in her rage she saw nothing. She turned in another direction and felt with outstretched arms among the pillars and corners of the church in the hope of seizing him. At last she stood still, made a threatening gesture, and then lay down again in the coffin. The philosopher could not recover his self-possession, and kept on gazing anxiously at it. Suddenly it rose from its place, and began hurtling about the church with a whizzing sound. At one time it was almost directly over his head, but the philosopher observed that it couldn't pass over the area of his charmed circle, so he kept on repeating his formulas of exorcism. The coffin now fell with a crash in the middle of the church, and remained laying there motionless. The corpse rose again. It had now a greenish-blue color, but at the same moment the distant crowing of a rooster was audible, and it lay down again. The philosopher's heart beat violently, and the perspiration poured in streams from his face. But heartened by the crowing of the rooster, he rapidly repeated the prayers. As the first light of dawn looked through the windows, there came a diacon and a great-haired Jevtuk, who acted as sacristan in order to release him. When he had reached the house, he couldn't sleep for a long time, but at last weariness overpowered him, and he slept till noon. When he awoke, his experiences of the night appeared to him like a dream. He was given a quart of brandy to strengthen him. At table he was again talkative, and ate a fairly large sucking pig almost without assistance. But nonetheless he resolved to say nothing of what he had seen, and to all curious questions only returned the answer, yes, some wonderful things happened. The philosopher was one of those men who, when they had a good meal, are uncommonly amiable. He lay down on a bench with his pipe in his mouth, looked blandly at all, and expectorated every minute. But as the evening approached, he became more and more pensive. About supper time, nearly the whole company had assembled in order to play Krapli. This is a kind of game of skittles, in which instead of balls, long staves are used, and the winner has the right to ride on the back of his opponent. It provided the spectators with much amusement. Sometimes the groom, a huge man, would clamber on the back of the swineherd, who was slim and short and shrunken. Another time the groom would present his own back, while Doris sprang on it shouting, "What a regular ox!" Those of the company who were more staid sat by the threshold of the kitchen. They looked uncommonly serious, smoked their pipes, and didn't even smile when the younger ones went into fits of laughter over some joke of the groom or spirit. Thomas vainly attempted to take part in the game. A gloomy thought was firmly fixed like a nail in his head. In spite of his desperate efforts to appear cheerful after supper, fear had overmastered his whole being, and it increased with the growing darkness. "Now, it is time for us to go, Mr. Student," said the grey-haired Cossack, and stood up with Doris. "Let us betake ourselves to our work." Thomas was conducted to the church in the same way as on the previous evening. Again he was left alone, and the door was bolted behind him. As soon as he found himself alone, he began to feel in the grip of his fears. He again saw the dark pictures of saints in their gilt frames, and the black coffin which stood menacing and silent in the middle of the church. "Never mind," he said to himself, "I am over the first shock. The first time I was frightened, but I am not so at all now. No, not at all." He quickly went into the stall, drew a circle around him with his finger, uttered some prayers and formulas for exorcism, and then began to read the prayers for the dead in a loud voice, and with a fixed resolution not to look up from the book nor take notice of anything. He did so for an hour, and began to grow a little tired. He cleared his throat and drew his snuff box out of his pocket. But before he had taken a pinch, he looked nervously towards the coffin. A sudden chill shot through him. The witch was already standing before him on the edge of the circle, and had fastened her green eyes upon him. He shuddered, looked down at the book, and began to read his prayers and exorcism aloud. Yet all the while he was aware how her teeth chattered, and how she stretched out her arms to seize him. But when he cast a hasty glance towards her, he saw that she was not looking in his direction, and it was clear that she couldn't see him. Then she began to murmur in an undertone, and terrible words escaped her lips, words that sounded like the bubbling of boiling pitch. The philosopher didn't know their meaning, but he knew that they signified something terrible, and were intended to counteract his exorcism. After she had spoken, a stormy wind arose in the church, and there was a noise like a rushing of many birds. He heard the noise of their wings and claws as they flapped against and scratched at the iron bars of the church windows. There were also violent blows on the church door, as if someone were trying to break it in pieces. The philosopher's heart beat violently. He didn't dare to look up, but continued to read the prayers without a pause. At last there was heard in the distance the shrill sound of the rooster's crow. The exhausted philosopher stopped and gave a great sigh of relief. Those who came to release him found him more dead than alive. He had leaned his back against the wall and stood motionless, regarding them without any expression in his eyes. They were obliged almost to carry him to the house. He then shook himself, asked for and drank a quart of brandy. He passed his hand through his hair and said, "There are all sorts of horrors in the world, and such dreadful things happen that—" Here he made a gesture as though to ward off something. All who heard him bent their heads forward in curiosity. Even a small boy who ran on everyone's errands stood by with his mouth wide open. Just then a young woman in a close-fitting dress passed by. She was the old cook's assistant, and very coquettish. She always stuck something in her bodice by way of ornament, a ribbon or a flower, or even a piece of paper if she could find something else. "Good day, Thomas," she said as she saw the philosopher. "Dear me, what has happened to you?" she exclaimed, striking her hands together. "Well, what is it, you silly creature?" "Good heavens, you have grown quite grey." "Yes, so he has," said Spirit, regarding him more closely. "You have grown as grey as an old jaftuk." When the philosopher heard that, he hastened into the kitchen, where he had noticed on the wall a dirty three-cornered piece of looking-glass. In front of it hang some forget-me-nots, evergreens and a small garland, a proof that it was a toilet glass of the young cat. With alarm he saw that it actually was as they had said. His hair was quite grizzled. He sank into reverie. At last he said to himself, "I will go to the colonel, tell him all and declare that I will read no more prayers. He must send me back at once to Kiev." With this intention he turned towards the doorsteps of the colonel's house. Okay, we're taking our final pause now. And I need to stretch and hydrate. Oh, thank you for the follow, Birdwatcher. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing? Nice to see you here. We're taking our final pause before we continue and hopefully finishing reading the story. How are you liking it so far? Oh, I finished my tea. Oh, Fito. Fito's still not sleeping. Well, I guess it is morning for you after all. It's so dark now in the room. Like, I didn't turn on the lights. So dark. Such an atmosphere. Ah, thank you. I'm trying my best. I'm not the best at English reading, but I'm trying my best, and I think the translation is quite good actually. Honestly, it's a very stupid thought, but I would consider trying to translate a piece of the story myself just to see how I could do. Because, you know, sometimes because I actually know English on like a decent level, like at least my knowledge. Maybe I'm not able to use it decently, but at least I know it decently. Sometimes I read some translations for like subtitles and stuff, and I'm like, I could do a better job than that. So I'm kind of curious to try to translate some stuff in English myself at some point, but also like just like a side note, because the author of this story was born in Ukraine, actually. So like this culture that described here is more of Ukrainian rather than Russian, right? And a lot of words that are used here are not inherently Russian words as well. Like I can read them obviously in Russian, but like it would be hard to translate them, you know? Oh, I see, Fito. I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Work. But yes, we're gonna be continuing, and we're gonna be, I think, finishing. I think this is our final break. Let me stretch again. I'm shrimping so much. If anybody wants to gift me an anti-shrimp device through my throne wish list, feel free to do so. Because honestly, for streams like that, I feel like I need that. Okay. Let us continue. So, our character went to the colonels. How old is this story? Damn, bro, very old. Right, let me see what year it was written in. Wait, why am I googling it in English? Let's see, how old is it? No, I'm not interested about the movie. I'm interested about the 1835. It was published by Gogol, obviously, in 1835. It has a pretty cool illustration here. So yeah, it is an old story. Not quite as old as folk tales that I read earlier today, but you know, still pretty old. Anti-shrimp, well, it's a posture character. It's basically a posture character, but like I call it anti-shrimp device because I'm shrimping. So you know, yeah. Yeah, but you know, if you wanna make me a Christmas present, I have it on my throne wish list. Oh, apologies. Ay. The colonel was sitting motionless in his room. His face displayed the same hopeless grief which Thomas had observed on his first arrival. Only the hollows in his cheeks had deepened. It was obvious that he took very little or no food at all. A strange paleness made him look almost as though made of marble. "Good day," he said as he observed Thomas standing, cap in hand, at the door. "Well, how are you getting all right?" "Yes, sir, all right. Such hellish things are going on that one would like to rush away as far as one's feet can carry one." "How so?" "Your daughter, sir. When one considers the matter, she is, of course, of noble descent. No one can dispute that. But don't be angry, and may God grant her eternal rest." "Very well. What about her?" "She is in league with the devil. She inspires one with such dread that all prayers are useless." "Pray, pray! It was not for nothing that she sent for you. My dove was troubled about her salvation and wished to expel all the evil influences by means of prayer." I swear, gracious sir, it is beyond my power. Pray, pray, continued the colonel in some persuasive tone. There is only one night more. You're doing a Christian work, and I will reward you richly. However great your reward may be, I will not read the prayers anymore, sir, said Thomas in tone of decision. Listen, philosopher, said the colonel with a menacing air. I will not allow any objections. In your seminary, you may act as you like, but here it won't do. If I have you noted, it will be somewhat different to the rector's cannings. Do you know what a strong kanchuk is? Of course I do, said the philosopher in a low voice. A number of them together are insupportable. Yes, I think so too. But you don't know yet how hot my fellows can make it, replied the colonel threateningly. He sprang up, and his face assumed a fierce, despotic expression, betraying the savagery of his nature, which had been only temporarily modified by grief. After the first lodging, they pour on brandy and then repeated, "Go away and finish your work. If you don't obey, you won't be able to stand again, and if you do, you will get 1,000 ducats." That is a devil of a fellow, thought the philosopher to himself, and went out. One can't trifle with him. But wait a little, my friend, I will escape you so cleverly that even your hounds can't find me. He determined, under any circumstances, to run away, and only waited till the hour after dinner arrived, when all the servants were accustomed to take a nap on the hay in the barn, and to snore and puff so loudly that it sounded as if machinery had been set up there. At last the time came. Even Javtuk stretched himself out in the sun and closed his eyes. Tremblingly, and on a tiptoe, the philosopher stole softly into the garden, whence he thought he could escape more easily into the open country. This garden was generally so choked up with weeds that it seemed admirably adapted for such an attempt. With the exception of a single path used by the people of the house, the whole of it was covered with cherry trees, elder bushes, and tall half-thistles, with fibrous red buds. All these trees and bushes had been thickly overgrown with ivy, which formed a kind of roof. Its tendrils reached to the hedge and fell down on the other side in snake-like curves among the small wild field flowers. Behind the hedge, which bordered the garden, was a dense mass of wild heather, in which it didn't seem probable that anyone would care to venture himself, and the strong stubborn stems of which seemed likely to baffle any attempt to cut them. As the philosopher was about to climb over the hedge, his teeth chattered, and his heart beat so violently that he felt frightened at it. The skirts of his long cloak seemed to cling to the ground as though they had been fastened to it by pegs. When he had actually got over the hedge, he seemed to hear a shrill voice crying behind him, "Whither? Whither?" He jumped into the heather and began to run, stumbling over all the roots and treading on unfortunate moles. When he had emerged from the heather, he saw that he still had the wide field to cross, behind which was a thick, thorny underwood. This, according to his calculation, must stretch as far as the road leading to Kiev, and if he reached it he would be safe. Accordingly, he ran over the field and plunged into the thorny copse. Every sharp thorn he encountered tore a fragment from his coat. Then he reached a small open space. In the center of it stood a willow, whose branches hung down to the earth, and close by flowed a clear spring bright as silver. The first thing the philosopher did was to lay down and drink eagerly, for he was intolerably thirsty. "Splendid water," he said, wiping his mouth. "This is a good place to rest in." "No, better run further. Perhaps we're being followed," said a voice immediately behind him. Thomas started and turned. Before him stood Javtuk. "This devil of a Javtuk," he thought. "I would like to seize him by the feet and smash his hangdog face against the trunk of a tree." Why did you go around such a long way? Continued Joftuk. You had much better have chosen the path by which I came. It leads directly by the stable. Besides, it is a pity about your coat. Such splendid cloth. How much did it cost and all? Well, we have had a long walk. It is time to go home. The philosopher followed Joftuk in a very depressed state. Now, the accursed witch will attack me in earnest, he thought. But what have I really to fear? Am I not a Cossack? I have read all the prayers from 2 nights already. With God's help, I will get through the 3rd night also. It is plain that the witch must have a terrible load of guilt upon her, else the evil one would not help her so much. Feeling somewhat encouraged by these reflections, he returned to the courtyard and asked Dorish, who sometimes by the steward's permission had access to the wine cellar, to fetch him a small bottle of brandy. The 2 friends sat down before a barn and drank a pretty large one. Suddenly, the philosopher jumped up and said, "I want musicians! Bring some musicians!" But without waiting for them, he began to dance the tapak in the courtyard. He danced till tea time, and the servants, who as is usual in such cases had formed a small circle round him, grew at last tired of watching him and went away saying, "By heavens, the man can dance!" Finally, the philosopher lay down in the place where he had been dancing, and fell asleep. It was necessary to pour a bucket of cold water on his head to wake him up for supper. At the meal, he enlarged on the topic of what a Cossack ought to be, and how he should not be afraid of anything in the world. "It is time," said Joftuk. "Let us go." "I wish I could put a lighted match to your tongue," thought the philosopher. Then he stood up and said, "Let us go." On their way to the church, the philosopher kept looking around him on all sides, and tried to start a conversation with his companion, but both Joftuk and Dorish remained silent. It was a weird night. In the distance wolves howled continually, and even the barking of the dogs, and something unearthly about it. "That doesn't sound like wolves howling, but something else," remarked Dorish. Joftuk still kept silence, and the philosopher didn't know what answer to make. They reached the church and walked over the old wooden planks, whose rotten condition showed how little the lord of the manor cared about God and his soul. Joftuk and Dorish left the philosopher alone, as on the previous evenings. There was still the same atmosphere of menacing silence in the church, in the center of which stood the coffin with a terrible witch inside it. "I am not afraid, by heavens I am not afraid," he said. And after drawing a circle around himself as before, he began to read the prayers and exorcisms. An oppressive silence prevailed. The flickering candles filled the church with their clear light. The philosopher turned one page after another, and noticed that he wasn't reading what was in the book. Full of alarm, he crossed himself and began to sing a hymn. This calmed him somewhat, and he resumed his reading, turning the pages rapidly as he did so. Suddenly, in the midst of silence, the iron lid of the coffin sprang open with a jarring noise, and the dead witch stood up. She was this time still more terrible in aspect than at first. Her teeth chattered loudly, and her lips, through which poured the stream of dreadful curses, moved convulsively. A whirlwind arose in the church. The icons of saints fell on the ground, together with the broken window panels. The door was wrenched from its hinges, and a huge mass of monstrous creatures rushed into the church, which became filled with the noise of beating wings and scratching claws. All these creatures flew and crept about, seeking for the philosopher, from whose brain the last fumes of intoxication had vanished. He crossed himself ceaselessly, and uttered prayer after prayer, hearing all the time the unclean swarm rustling about him and brushing him with the tips of their wings. He had not the courage to look at them. He only saw one uncouth monster standing by the wall, with long shaggy hair and 2 flaming eyes. Over him, something hung in the air, which looked like a gigantic bladder covered with countless scabs, claws, and scorpion stings, and with black clots of fur hanging from it. All these monsters stared about, seeking him, but they couldn't find him, since he was protected by his sacred circle. "Bring the V, the king of gnomes! Bring the V!" cried the witch. A sudden silence followed. The howling of the wolves was heard in the distance, and soon heavy footsteps resounded through the church. Thomas looked up furtively and saw that an ungainly human figure with crooked legs was being led into the church. He was quite covered with black soil, and his hands and feet resembled knotted roots. He trod heavily and stumbled at every step. His eyelids were of enormous length. With terror, Thomas saw that his face was of iron. They led him in by the arms and placed him near Thomas' circle. "Raise my eyelids! I can't see anything," said the V in a dull, hollow voice, and they all hastened to help in doing so. "Don't look," an inner voice warned the philosopher, but he could not refrain from looking. "There he is!" exclaimed the V, pointing an iron finger at him, and all the monsters rushed on him at once. Struck down with terror, he sank to the ground and died. At that moment, there sounded a rooster's crow for the 2nd time. The earth spirits had not heard for the first one. In alarm, they hurried to the windows and the door to get out as quickly as possible. But it was too late. They all remained hanging as though fastened to the door and the windows. When the priest came, he stood amazed at such a discretion of God's house, and did not venture to read prayers there. The church remained standing as it was, with the monster hanging on the windows and the door. Gradually, it became overgrown with creepers, bushes, and wild heather, and no one can discover it now. When the report of this event reached Kiev, and the theologian Kalava heard what a fate had overtaken the philosopher Thomas, he sank for a whole hour into deep reflection. He had greatly altered of late. After finishing his studies, he had become bell ringer of one of the chief churches in the city, and he always appeared with a bruised nose, because the belfry staircase was in a ruinous condition. "Have you heard what has happened to Thomas?" said Tiberius Gorobets, who had become a philosopher and now wore a mustache. "Yes, God had appointed it so," answered the bell ringer. "Let us go to the ale-house. We will drink a glass to his memory." The young philosopher, who, with the enthusiasm of a novice, had made such full use of his privileges as a student that his breeches and coat, and even his cap, reeked of brandy and tobacco, agreed readily to the proposal. "He was a fine fellow, Thomas," said the bell ringer, as the limping innkeeper set the 3rd jug of beer before him. "A splendid fellow, and lost his life for nothing." "I know why he perished," said Gorobets. "Because he was afraid. If he had not feared her, the witch could have done nothing to him. One ought to cross oneself incessantly and spit exactly on her tail, and then not the least harm can happen. I know all about it, for here in Kiev all the old women in the marketplace are witches." The bell ringer nodded assent, but being aware that he could not say any more, he got up cautiously and went out, swaying to the right and left in order to find a hiding place in the thick steppe grass outside the town. At the same time, in accordance with his old habits, he did not forget to steal an old boot sole which lay on the ale-house bench. The end. Well, this is the story. This is V. So what do you think, guys? Oh, good morning, Peepsy. Hi. Hi, hi. Welcome, welcome. Colonel is a tricky word. It is pronounced as colonel in English. Oh, right, colonel. I forget the pronunciation of words, but you did get what I was saying anyway, so that's the most important part. F to that guy. I mean, yeah, you could say that. You could say that. Again, let me remind you that there are 2 movies available based on this story. One very old, so there might not be a translation to English, but there's a newer one, which probably you guys can watch. So, like, I really encourage you to check this out because it's very interesting stuff. Anyways. Oh no! Wait! Oh, wait. First of all, why do we not have notifications again? I've got an anti-shrimping device! Why was that you, Connor? Oh my god! Oh yeah, thank you so much! Is it contribution though, or is it wait, I don't get it. Where is my notification? I me not understand, but thank you so much anyways, Connor. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. It's an anti-shrimping device. Oh my god. Why do I not have notifications? I don't understand. Somebody needs to help me with phone notifications because like I tried to set them up and they still not working. And do I even have them here? Shoot. They were somewhere. Maybe I don't have them in the specific scene? Oh my god, I don't know. But thank you so much! Thank you! Thank you so much. Yes. That was the story. Oof, we've been streaming for 3 hours and I've been reading, but honestly I greatly enjoyed that. I know that I did say maybe playing with chat in my promotional post, but I'm not sure about games, to be honest. I lied to you. It was a trick to get you here so I can read you some bedtime stories. But yeah, so I don't think we will be playing anything, but I do hope that you enjoyed my little cozy stream. I know it's nothing really grand, you know, it was just me reading some stuff. Although, like, very cool stuff, in my personal opinion, obviously. Obviously. But I hope you enjoyed that, yeah. So I think we will be wrapping it up here. It's been 3 hours, and I need some fresh drink because I'm out of tea and anything. I see. Oh, thank you guys. Thank you, Vito. Thank you, Connor. Oh my god, I need to check if this thing is still available though. I might have to reorder it myself. But thank you so much. Oh my god. I love you guys so much. Oh no. Does that mean I need to read more stories? That I need to learn how to read? So, you know, I can finally have the anti-shrimping. Thank you so much. Thank you. Lots of love and kisses to you. Okay, so we will be wrapping up the stream on this very positive note. I genuinely hope you guys enjoyed. I don't know, like today before starting the stream, I felt kind of nervous for some reasons. I don't know why. Like recently, when I've been making some like kind of events or so, like I never felt nervous before streaming, right? But these days, somehow. Suddenly I'm like, but I wonder. What if nobody likes it? What if it was a bad idea? What if I'm gonna be, you know, like very... I don't know what happened. Find that the more you prepare for stream, the more nervous you get. I guess that's probably why. That probably is why, because like I found the background, right? I was looking for a background for a long time today, and everything was filled with AI art. So I found like one background that's not AI and it was free to use. So I'm like, okay, cool. And then I set up this, and then I got some fireplace sounds from YouTube media, and this and that, and I was like, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Can do a spontaneous 24-hour stream, no problem, but a 5-minute debut PowerPoint, I'm dead. Oh, bro, you're having your model debut at some point, right? Damn. I hope it's gonna be at appropriate hours for me. Oh, thank you for the follow! Oh, Christy! Welcome, welcome! Thank you for the follow! You forget to do anything, Connor? Oh, well, I mean, yeah, that's understandable. It's understandable. I also quite often forget to do stuff, but this time I really tried to set up everything, and as you can see, I completely forgot to set up throne notifications here. Like, I think I have them in my other scenes, but for some reason I don't see them here. Maybe they are finally working. Maybe I just didn't add them here. I don't know. Forgore, apologies, I forgot, but I'm really grateful to you guys for contributing towards my anti-shrimping. But yeah. Yep. Also, guys, by the way, let me give the shout out. Like, oh my god, what's going on? Twitch is being a bit laggy, but I'd like to give shout out to Fito. Again, once again, here I am once again. Because Fito is having his 2D model debut soon-ish. DM, I don't know, but I am the mother. I'm the proud mother of my new child. Oh, thank you for gifted sub! Thank you for gifted sub, Fito! Fito, thank you! Thank you! Connor, welcome to the club, buddy! Welcome! Thank you so much! Still angry. Yep, thank you. Much appreciated. But yeah, as I was saying, my dear child, Fito, so make sure to be at Fito's model debut. I will try to be there as well. Unless I'm sleeping, I hope I'm not. But, you know, I'm very proud mother. If Baka is Fito's mommy, you're Fito's mother, then what does that make Baka to you? I am married to Baka, did you not know? Is that new information for you? Baka asked me to marry her, and I did this, so, you know, it's all working, but is Baka Fito's mama? Of course I do. Wait, let's give shout out to Connor as well, because Connor is our great friend and supporter. Let me try to properly type it, because I am a grandma when it comes to technology. Did I type it correctly? Of course not. I keep wanting to put double N in Connor's name, but it does not belong there. No? It didn't work? Oh, it did. Just with a delay. No game. Oh no. But yeah, Connor, by the way, Connor is also a very great person in our community. I have not checked out Connor yet myself, so I should do that. But I don't know, where am I following? I'm not sure if I'm following, but I will go drop a follow, because otherwise I will never ever see streams. Am I following? I am? I think I am following already. I don't know. Twitch is loading for like forever. It's literally bread. Yeah. Oh no, I'm not following. Okay, there you go. Yes, I've seen the pictures. I was like, it's bread. It's bread tuber. Haha, funny. Bread tuber. Oh, your PC blue screen or nor. Or nor. Or nor. But it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Anyways, I am looking for a person to raid because it is time for us to slowly wrap up the stream, and I do have a person to raid, and this person is playing Phasmophobia right now with friends, and I'm gonna be very salty about my Phasmophobia not working again, but it's okay. It's okay. I can take that. But since we are in a bit of a Halloweeny vibe, I think we're gonna raid the person. The VTuber's name is Sophie's Daydream. As far as I remember, Sophie is an artist as well, so you know. Gotta give a follow, and also super cute model. So let me... Phasmophobia, yes, Startorado. Let me also get you guys a radio message. Gotta fix my Phasmo. I don't know if my Phasmo is fixable. I am apologizing, but like I don't know if my Phasmo is fixable. So my OBS is being very slow. But anyways, thank you everybody for joining me today. Thank you everybody for coming to my stream and, you know, supporting me and listening to me read. I'd like to be able to read in English better, like especially the complicated English. So I might at some point consider doing some more of this type of stream. Not sure yet, but we'll see. Maybe. Can I please copy my own message? Oh my god. OBS, please. Just let me copy my own message. I'm begging you. Thank you. So yeah. Not sure when's the next stream, but I already have some plans of what I want to stream. Probably not this week though. I'd like to take a break and decompress after reading for so long. So I'll see you at some point soon. And for now, guys, copy the raid message. Don't forget to paste it in the chat of the person that we're gonna be raiding. And we are gonna be going in a minute. So bye bye, guys. Thank you. Bye bye. See you.